The anime started with Sung Jin-Woo, who is your typical Chad. Joking, he's an ugly loser with nothing on his life. His father went to buy milk and his mother is in a coma. This leaves him a broke, useless guy who must feed his younger sister with his E-rank hunter skills. 10 years ago, huge gates appeared all around the planet, releasing several monsters to destroy the population. Humanity had no chance to fight them as weapons didn't deal any damage. Yet, suddenly some humans awakened some special powers. Those humans are known as hunters. Hunters are classified based on their magical power from E rank to S rank. Humanity managed to survive for the next couple years with these new powers, but they still must clear the dungeons that show up. If they don't, the dungeon will accumulate magic and open up, releasing monsters back into the world. 3 years ago that thing happened in a nearby island. S-rank dungeon wasn't cleared and monsters filled the island. Hunters tried to clear it, but in the end the ant monsters were stronger. Present day, we see several men around a construction site. One of them, named Kim, is getting some coffee as the server wishes him good luck with today's raid. Another guy named Park calls Kim out. Kim asks him what he's doing here. Is he quit being a hunter? Park explains that his wife is pregnant, therefore he needs to make some money. Kim replies that there's nothing better than a good raid to make some money. However, Park is worried because his skills were already bad and he feels he will be worse since he hasn't raided in a while. Suddenly, everyone's attention turns to Jin-Woo, who's just arriving at the scene. Jin-Woo stays humble, mentioning that he's looking forward to work with everyone today. Even Kim greets Jin-Woo, asking if he's already eaten. Jin-Woo confirms and continues walking. Park gets curious and asks if Jin-Woo is a strong hunter since everyone seems happy to see him. Yet, Kim giggles as he realizes that Kim retired before Jin-Woo started to raid. Kim reveals that Jin-Woo has a special nickname, the weakest hunter of all mankind. Park is confused because he was expecting something like the strongest. Kim explained that Jin-Woo is an E-rank hunter who always gets injured even in E-rank gates, therefore, people call him the weakest hunter. However, Kim thinks that since Jin-Woo is here, this dungeon is going to be easy to complete. Kim tells Park to stop talking about it because Jin-Woo might hear them. However, Jin-Woo sighs as he could hear everything. While walking, Jin-Woo hears a familiar voice mentioning that he's hurt again. He notices Joo-hee and greets her, mentioning it's good to see her again. She asks about what happened to his face, but he replies that some stuff happened. She asks what happened to him and he decides to explain the story. She finds out he ended up hospitalized and he reveals that despite raiding E-rank dungeon, he was the only one who got hurt. She's confused on how, but he explains that everyone else was high ranked so they didn't bring in healer. She complains about it because they think everyone is overconfident they wouldn't get hurt. Yet Jin-Woo admits that it's his fault because he's weak, but still he's already used to getting hurt. Jin-Woo then notices it's about time to start raiding and tells her to get going. They meet Song Chi-yul, an experienced hunter who asks if they're fine with him taking charge and being the party leader. Since he's the highest rank, everyone agrees. With all set, they open the gate and enter the dungeon. As they get in, Kim tells Jin-Woo to stay close to avoid getting hurt. Jin-Woo pulls out his knife, mentioning this is the only piece of equipment he can afford, but still he will give his best today, and enters the dungeon. Meanwhile, Go Gun-hee, the president of the Hunter Association, tells his right hand that he met the government who asked them to avoid dungeon breaks. However, they also demanded them to supply goods that have been acquired inside dungeons. He doesn't feel like those demands are unbearable as they make money from reselling goods obtained from the dungeons. Those goods are crystals that people obtain from slaying monsters. Inside the dungeon, Jin-Woo is seen covered in blood with a crystal in his hand. He's happy that he managed to defeat a weak goblin, but Joo-hee tells him to be careful. Another goblin attacks him, but he manages to block the attack. The goblin continues attacking, but he evades everything. He gets a chance to attack and tries to piece the goblin. Yet, upon contact his blade shatters. The goblin wastes no time to stab him. Joo-hee is worried about him, but Park comes forward and defeats the goblin. Jin-Woo removes the blade from his stomach and lays on the floor as he's losing blood. Park tells Joo-hee to heal Jin-Woo while he defeats the nearby monsters. Joo-hee rushes to Jin-Woo's aid and starts using her healing skills. While being healed, Jin-Woo sees everyone easily defeating the monsters and feels envious. President Go continues to explain that essence stones obtained from high-rank monsters can be used to make stronger weapons, which in return enables hunters to defeat stronger monsters. He also mentions they can obtain mana crystals mined from dungeons and make weapons with it. However, its quality ain't that effective. His right hand doesn't understand why the government wants them, and President Go explains they want to use them to create a new type of energy, safer than nuclear and more efficient than the normal energy sources. That will lead to less pollution, creating a true green energy, but they can only create it if the hunters clear the dungeons. Back in the dungeon, Jin-Woo is healed and the group managed to defeat the boss. Joo-hee is healing him again and asks why does he want to become a hunter so badly. She explains that if he keeps doing the same thing over and over again he will find himself in big trouble. Jin-Woo apologizes, but Joo-hee complains she doesn't want an apology, she's just worried about him. Song talks to everyone, explaining the raid is about done and everyone starts talking about their drops. Jin-Woo then looks at his essence stone and feels pity for himself. He risked his life just a pitiful reward. Suddenly, another guy shouts mentioning there's another entrance nearby. Everyone is confused, but Song reveals that sometimes there is double dungeons. Some see this as something strange, but most of them think this means their rewards will be bigger. Song talks to the group, explaining that the dungeon gate doesn't close unless they also defeat the second dungeon's boss. Usually they should report this situation to the Hunter Association and wait for a decision, but that also means other hunters might come and steal this boss. He decides to make everyone vote if they should go for it or not. There is 13 members in total, half of them vote yes while the rest votes no. Jin-Woo is the one who will decide the fate of the party with his vote. Jin-Woo thinks to himself that this dungeon is too dangerous for him, but he's broke and he must find a way to send his sister through college. He also has to pay the fees for his mother treatment, therefore, to protect his family he decides to say yes. Meanwhile, we see some people perform their Hunter Awakening examination in the Hunter Association. A guy places his hand on a black crystal and they measure his amount of power. We find out that there are several groups called guilds. They recruit hunters with potential and train them in order to complete dungeon raids. However, the strongest hunter in the country is known as Cha Hae-in, a guild vice leader. She's a cutie blondie who's an S rank. Back inside the dungeon, some members think they're venturing too deep. They've been walking for 40 minutes already and mention on they have 1 hour to leave the dungeon after defeating the boss. Therefore, they have about 20 minutes of leeway. Jin-Woo uses this chance to apologize to Joo-hee. She asks why and he explains that he's the reason why she was forced to stay and defeat the second boss. Joo-hee says she's okay and he shouldn't worry about her. He insists asking if she's sure, but Joo-hee reveals that she's mad. She yells at him asking if he's a psycho. She explains that if he was stabbed a little higher he would have a hole in his chest. Not only that, but his arms and legs were almost removed. She also reveals that her B-rank healing barely managed to heal him. She calls him reckless and asks why did he agree to come. She asks if he hurt his head and asks for an answer. Jin-Woo apologizes and thinks to himself that the only reason why he's still alive is because Joo-hee is a B-rank healer. If it wasn't for her, he would be dead. She asks if he's really sorry and he confirms. She suddenly flirts with him, mentioning that he should repay her with a dinner date. Jin-Woo is confused, but she gets mad asking if he doesn't want to spend time with her. Jin-Woo blushes, literally explaining she's out of his league, but he would love to. Suddenly, someone mentions they have arrived to the boss room. Some members are confused because they never found a boss room with a door before. They think this is strange, but Kim asks if they're going to head back empty-handed after coming this way. He claims that they could be the first ones to discover the new dungeon, therefore, if anyone wants to return they can. However, he will be going and even if it's alone. Meanwhile, the guy who performed his hunter examination is watching President go in a video. In short, he explains how careful they should always be and survive despite their rank. Back in the dungeon, they all open the doors and step inside. The torches all around the room start to light up as they step in. Some are impressed as they've never seen anything like this room, but they should hurry up and look around. The group sees several statues standing around the room and Jin-Woo notices another one sitting on what it seems to be a throne. Jin-Woo thinks this one is the bigger one, but the group starts to mention how they feel like they're being watched. They then notice something strange. There are no monsters inside the room. Song then notices the floor and sees what it seems to be a magic circle. Kim calls Song out, mentioning there is a statue with something written. Everyone gets near the angel statue and notice the inscription. Song reads it out loud, mentioning those are the commandments of the garden and temple. First, they must worship God. Second, praise the God. Third, believe in God, and those who don't obey should die. Joo-hee freaks out and calls Jin-Woo, mentioning the eyes of the giant statue moved and looked at them. Jin-Woo was confused and says she must be imagining. Suddenly the door closes. Everyone freaks out, wondering if they're trapped. One of the members starts walking towards the door, complaining they didn't want to come here in the first place. He touches the door and suddenly a statue moves and slices his head off. Everyone is shocked and starts screaming. Jin-Woo falls into despair, thinking about the rank of the guy who just died. He knows the guy was way stronger than himself. The statue returns to the original position, but Jin-Woo still cannot move as the guy was killed in an instant. He doesn't understand who this monster could be in a D-rank dungeon. Jin-Woo then looks at the bigger statue, paying attention to every detail until he sees its eyes moving to look at him. Jin-Woo starts having a flashback about the moments he faced life and death situations. He was separated from his team during his first raid and ended up injured by E-rank monsters, forcing him to spend several weeks in the hospital. Later, he almost starved to death while trapped in a maze. He explains that hunters spend their money earned from essence stones to buy more weapons to defeat stronger monsters. However, he always only had money to buy cheap butter knives. If the knives broke, he would be forced to fight the monsters with his fists. He didn't even have money for clothes, but he kept going. He never earned much money and was always mocked by other hunters. Therefore, he always looked for loopholes to survive. He had to observe everything in detail to get his chance. Upon returning to reality, Jin-Woo shouts at them to get down. The statue shoots a laser beam with its eyes, slaying several hunters. The ones who survived are shocked at this scene and start to panic. Luckily, Jin-Woo managed to save Ju-hee, but she's panicking in fear. He looks around confused about what happened and how they ended up like this. He knows they're trapped and cannot escape. In the end, he freaks out because he knows they will all die. The story continues. Upon looking around, everyone's minds only think about running. Yet, Song orders them to stand still because if they get up they will be attacked. Ju-hee is still shaking in fear and Jin-Woo tries to calm her down. Song approaches Jin-Woo and tells that if he didn't warn them, everyone would be dead by now. He asks how Jin-Woo knew about it, but he replies that he just sensed danger. Jin-Woo then notices that Song's arm is missing, but the old man says it's okay and asks him to stop the bleeding. Jin-Woo warps bandages around Song's arm. Song explains that usually he would ask Ju-hee to heal him, but she cannot deal with frightening situations. For that reason, she's only going on easy raids, despite being a rank B healer. Song also reveals that he's been into some B rank raids, but knows that this place must be A rank dungeon, but he then corrects himself saying this is an S rank dungeon. He then remembers the angel statue and the commandments of the garden and temple. He repeats the commandments and Jin-Woo thinks the god mentioned on those rules is the big statue. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo's younger sister Jin-Ah is at school talking to her friend Song-hee who missed the early classes. However, Song-hee ignores her question and asks if Jin-ah's brother is a hunter. Jin-ah confirms but mentions that despite Jin-Woo's improved body as a hunter, he always suffers injuries. Back in the dungeon, Song tells Jin-Woo it's a bad idea to fight the statue and they should find a way to escape. However, there's a brain-damaged guy who refuses to die like this. He starts powering up his power, mentioning he just signed a contract with a major guild and don't want to die here. Song orders the guy to not move. However, the guy starts running forward, mentioning that he's confident that he's faster against every single opponent. He runs toward the door, but the huge statue looks at him. In the end, his body disappears, only leaving his feet. Everyone starts to panic and Jin-Woo mentions the statues could easily kill everyone inside. Song confirms it, making Jin-Woo wonder why the statue hasn't killed them yet. Usually monsters attack them blindly, but the statue isn't. He then thinks about the commandments and asks Song what was the first one. Song replies it's to worship the god. With those words, Jin-Woo thinks this dungeon has some special rules. He gets up with a plan which initially Song tries to stop him, but after seeing the look in Jin-Woo's eyes, Song is sure that he hasn't given up in life. With courage, Jin-Woo gets up and notices the statue preparing to attack. He suddenly kneels down and notices the statue stop the attack. He tells everyone to kneel down to the statue, making everyone confused. Song asks if he figured something out and Jin-Woo confirms it, mentioning that as long as their heads are below a certain height, the statue won't attack. In short, this is what the first commandment means. He then bows down and Song asks if he's sure. Jin-Woo thinks he is and everyone follows his movements. Everyone questions if they will be able to survive by doing this, but the statue's eyes deactivate. Suddenly, the statue starts smiling, making everyone afraid of its expression. They realize the statue isn't attacking them and one of the guys gets up and starts celebrating because the statue won't attack them. The others get up thinking they're saved, but Jin-Woo knows this isn't over yet. Suddenly, the huge statue gets up and they scream because they thought this was all over. Song asks Jin-Woo what to do next, but our boy doesn't know yet. The statue starts walking forward and Jin-Woo mentions that they cannot violate the commandments. He then tells everyone the second commandment to praise the god. Everyone is confused on how they should do it, but another guy steps forward. He claims that he knows how to praise God because of his traditional folklore research. In short, this guy kneels and starts praying. The statue starts to slow down and looks at the guy. However, Jin-Woo senses something strange because those are not the words to praise this god. The statue smiles as it lifts its foot while the guy continues praying. In the end, the statue steps on top of him, everyone panics and starts running, but the statue continues stepping on top of some others. The statue starts chasing everyone and one of the guys runs near a statue. His friend tries to warn him to look out behind, but that statue moves and slices him in half. Jin-Woo takes Julie to run while thinking about how they can praise the god. She's still panicking and he thinks that he needs to save her. He looks around to the other statues and compares their weapons, until he notices there are some statues with some musical instruments. After a quick thinking, he yells at everyone to get under the statues that have them. Song is confused but follows the orders. The statue starts playing the instrument and Song tells everyone to follow the advice as those statues won't attack them. More people get under those statues and feel relieved because they have been spared. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo and Ju-hee manage to reach a statue but it doesn't play. Jin-Woo quickly understands the statue won't play because two persons cannot be under the same statue. He orders Ju-hee to stay under this statue while he goes to the next one. She tries to stop him but he runs as the huge statue chases him. Ju-hee's statue starts playing the instrument and Jin-Woo finds the next one. He's almost stepped by the huge statue, but he manages to avoid rolling towards another one. This statue has a shield who also tries to kill him. Ju-hee starts screaming his name, but Jin-Woo managed to avoid fatal damage. He slowly crawls to the next statue, determined to not give up. The huge statue is still walking behind him and prepares to step on him. Suddenly, the statue generally was crawling to start singing. The huge statue barely missed his body, but Jin-Woo feels relieved as he made it, and he thinks this is the answer to praise God, and the huge statue sits down on its throne. Ju-hee runs towards him and asks if he's fine. Jin-Woo confirms, but upon looking down notices that he lost one leg. She tries to heal him with all her power, but he says that he's okay. She refuses to stop, but she ends using so much of her power and she starts coughing blood. The group looks around and thinks this is tragic. Yet, despite Song losing one of his arms, some members who voted yes blame him for this situation. Song apologizes for forcing them into a decision and decides to bear all responsibility. Jin-Woo watches the discussion and thinks this is not the time to argue with each other because there's still one last commandment. The statue suddenly raises its and an altar raises in the middle of the room. Everyone is confused, but Jin-Woo replies that's a common thing in mythology. In short, the statue wants them to make a living sacrifice to the god. That's the final commandment, to believe in God. Everyone gets shocked, but one of the members who voted yes reveals that he knows what this means. He grabs his sword and points at Song and mentioning they need a sacrifice. He goes on to blame Song because his friend wanted to provide for his family and got sliced in half, and since Song claimed that he would take responsibility, he wants Song to sacrifice himself for all the lives they lost. With those words, Song decides to accept his fate as the party leader. He walks toward the altar. Upon reaching close to the altar, a flame appears. Everyone is confused, but Song asks Jin-Woo what he needs to do. Jin-Woo is still confused about this, thinking they don't need a living sacrifice. He apologizes for the inconvenience and asks if they can take him to the altar so that he can check it. When the three reach near the altar, 3 more flames appear. Song asks if he has figured out something, but Jin-Woo hasn't. He wonders if someone will come to rescue them if they wait there. Song explains that since this dungeon has been around for 7 days, the Hunter Association will probably take some actions before they come to rescue them. Jin-Woo thinks that if they fail here, this huge statue will run wild into their world. Meanwhile, Jin-Ah goes to the hospital to visit her mother like she does every day. She talks about her day and how her friend was late and her future plans. Back inside the dungeon, Jin-Woo tells Ju-hee and the top anime betrays to come to the altar. Despite hesitation, the 2 steps inside, making 2 more flames appear. Suddenly, the altar unleashes some electricity and a new ring of blue flames appear around. The dungeon door suddenly opens up, making everyone worried because this could be a trap. One of the blue flames disappears and the statues start to light up and move forward. They all start to freak out while Jin-Woo looks around and notices a strange mechanic. He tells everyone to not close their eyes and look at the statues because they will stop moving. In short, this is basically a game where they all must keep their eyes on those statues. Everyone follows his instructions and the statues stop moving. However, some members are too anxious and start running away from the circle. One of the normal flames extinguished, but she managed to leave the room. The door, however, is starting to close. Song asks Jin-Woo if he knows what happened, but he's confused. He thinks about the 3 commandments and thinks the door is a trap because the last one is to believe in God. He believes the door is just to give them a false sense of hope because they're afraid. This is a way to test everyone's faith in the statute. However, another guy also gives in to this hope and throws Jin-Woo aside before running toward the door. More people think about leaving, but Jin-Woo explains that if someone else leaves, the statues will able to move because of a blind spot. Song wants a better explanation, to which Jin-Woo replies they cannot move their eyes from the statues. He explains that the blue flames extinguish, everyone will be able to escape. Yet, there are members who think that if the flames go out, they will be locked inside. The guy reveals he didn't expect Jin-Woo, the weakest hunter, to be the most useful one. He thanks him for allowing them to survive, but the guy starts to cry and apologizes before running away. Jin-Woo starts crying, asking why they betrayed him. He refuses to give up and desires to survive by quickly looking at every statue. Yet, Song orders Joo-hee and Jin-Woo to escape while he stays behind. He thinks that as long as one person stays behind, the door won't close. However, Joo-hee's legs give up. Upon hearing those words, Jin-Woo tells Song to take Joo-hee and leave. Joo-hee tries to refuse, but Jin-Woo gets angry and shouts that he has no foot so he cannot help her. She starts complaining, but Song knocks her out because they're running out of time. Song then carries Joo-hee outside the door, making Jin-Woo relieved because he's the only one who will die. He notices a sword on the ground and picks it up while the statues continue walking. He raises it, promising that he will take one of them to be his best buddy in hell. The statues start attacking him, but he manages to dodge. The statues again attack him, making him lose one arm, followed by several other attacks. He shouts in pain, mentioning that he also wanted to become stronger, but he can't. After several attacks, he's barely alive, but refuses to give up. The statues stab his shoulder, and he remembers those who just betrayed him, trying to justify it by mentioning their family. This is all selfishness because he also has a family that he wants to return and take care. In the end, the statue lifts him into the air and throws him into the altar while preparing for the last attack. He cries as he doesn't want to die and wishes one last chance. As the statue is about to slice him, the last blue flame goes out. A system message appears asking if he wants to become a player. He says yes. The story continues. We see Jin-Woo wakes up in the hospital in shock. He notices that he still has his arm and pulls the blanket to check if he has his leg. After confirming, he thinks that he was stabbed through the chest, but there's no mark. He thinks this was all a dream until someone knocks on the door. The guy is impressed that Jin-Woo is awake and introduces himself, Woo Jin-chul, a manager of the Hunters Association surveillance team. Jin-Woo wonders what they want from him, but Jin-chul first asks his partner to get the doctor here. That's when Jin-Woo finds out he was unconscious for the past 3 days. He asks about Joo-hee and Song, but the guy confirms they're fine despite Song losing his arm. As a result, he will be forced to retire as a hunter. Joo-hee, on the other hand, is still traumatized and getting psychiatric care. In her case, she won't probably continue working as a hunter. Jin-Woo thinks about everything that happened, and Jin-chul mentions that only 6 people survived that dungeon. He says that working as a hunter is dangerous, but it's still rare to see this type of outcome. However, he mentions that something was strange. The White Tiger Guild came to the dungeon after being alerted by the guys who ran away. However, they never saw a second room. All they saw was Jin-Woo collapsed on the ground. They investigated but found no evidence of the so-called temple or statues that everyone described. Jin-Woo and Jin-chul think that's unbelievable. However, every survivor said the same thing, and they found the bodies of the ones who died. Therefore, the Hunter Association cannot suspect the rest of the group for PK everyone. Jin-chul, however, reveals they suspect Jin-Woo of experiencing a second awakening. Jin-Woo is shocked to hear those words and remembers all he was taught. A hunter's power is determined when they awaken their power and never changes. However, there are some rare cases where a hunter goes through a second awakening. Some of them goes from low ranks to rank A or even rank S. Jin-Woo tries to hide his excitement about this possibility. They then pull out a gadget to measure his power and tell him to put his hand over it. Jin-Woo smiles, thinking this is his lucky day, and puts his hand. Jin-chul, however, is thinking that it was impossible for Jin-Woo to survive that type of described dungeon because he's weak, and since there isn't any evidence of the monsters, he thinks Jin-Woo became either rank A or S. However, his score is a big fat 10. Jin-Woo is excited to hear the result and what rank he will get now. Jin-chul, however, apologizes for the mistake because Jin-Woo are still worse than trash. They leave, and Jin-chul's assistant mentions that every other E-rank hunter managed to get 70 or higher. While walking, Jin-chul thinks they cannot explore that dungeon because it disappeared, but he still doesn't understand how Jin-Woo survived. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo are in his room thinking sorry for himself, yet he's confused because they never asked him about the screen in front of him. The screen shows that he has unread messages, and he thinks that he's the only one who can see it. He clicks on the screen, but it doesn't react. He suddenly remembers that when he was about to die, the screen showed that he completed the secret quest Courage of the Week. Suddenly, Gina enters into the room and starts berating him. She tells him to take care of himself because that makes her worried. He apologizes and she complains, mentioning that he always ends up in the hospital while the others are fine. He looks at her and cannot believe he was prepared to leave her behind. He smiles at her, but she complains again. If this happens again, she will quit school and get a job so that he can quit being a hunter. He apologizes again and asks if she can see the Windows screen. She's confused and asks what he is talking about. He apologizes and asks her about games. He wants to know how he can read unread messages, but she thinks he's crazy and should get another medical checkup. He replies that she used to play tons of games and she gives up, replying that he would be able to read it by opening his message box. He repeats those words and the message is open. He notices that he has a daily quest called Strength Training has arrived. He thinks for a bit and remembers the word player was mentioned before. Gina in the end gives up and leaves. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo starts reading everything about the system. In short, it was made to help him develop. However, if he fails to follow the system, he will get a penalty. He then sees a screen mentioning the rewards have arrived and gets confused. He then accepts the daily quest and notices that he will become bald like Saitama. He must do 100 push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and then run 10 kilometers. If he doesn't complete them, he will be punished. Jin-Woo laughs, mentioning he's in the hospital, therefore that's impossible to do, and takes a nap. Meanwhile, Jin-Chul is in the car telling his boss on a call that Jin-Woo is still trash. The boss is at least happy the monsters didn't leave the dungeon and started to roam on the streets. However, this is still pretty much confusing. Jin-Chul confirms this is weird and they decide to mark this case as something special that will be revised on the future. Meanwhile, in another guild building, the guild leader tells his strongest member Cha to participate in a B-rank dungeon as instructor. She is confused because she's an S rank, but he explains that raid will be a test and practical training for their new recruits. Yet, she still doubts her ability as a mentor. The leader replies she just needs to beat the monsters as usual and everyone will learn from watching. She hesitates, but the guy mentions their guild is on the top 5 of the country, but they're unseen in the international level. He knows their ranks cannot improve, but their teamwork can. Hours later, a gate suddenly appears in the middle of the road. The military takes care of the whole situation while everyone wonders when the hunters are going to show up. Back in the hospital, Jin-Woo is still sleeping. The daily quest timer runs down and warns that he failed. Suddenly, the ground starts shaking and Jin-Woo wakes up. He ends up falling from his bed, but when he opens his eyes, he sees himself in the middle of the desert. He's confused about what's happening and thinks this is just a dream. However, there is a giant desert centipede looking at him. The system window then shows up and tells him to survive for the next 4 hours. Jin-Woo is shocked and starts running. Meanwhile, the nurses check his room and notice that it's empty. Jin-Woo is doing his best to run and scream from this huge centipede, but more appear. He's been running for 2 hours already. The nurses are looking for him, but they never find him. Luckily, Jin-Woo manages to run for the whole 4 hours and returns to his room. The system alerts that he completed his penalty quest, but he collapses before checking the rewards. The nurses then enter his room again and get shocked to see him. The next day, Jin-Woo finally gives up being a lazy loser and gets up from bed. He tells his sister on the phone that he will be released soon. After hanging the call, he gets up and starts doing his quest. Days later, Joo-hee receives a call inviting her to join a D-rank dungeon. She thinks about rejecting it and apologizes. The guy on the phone then mentions Jin-Woo already awoke and she decides to visit him. At the hospital, she hears the nurses complaining about Jin-Woo running and exercising. They complain that hunters are supposed to heal faster than normal people, but they think he's crazy for doing this. Joo-hee looks outside the window and sees Jin-Woo running. He takes a small break and talks about this situation. It's been 4 days since the Windows system appeared. Every time he completes the quest he gets 3 types of rewards. He accepts full recovery and returns back to normal as if he never exercised. The other reward is 3 points that he can distribute to any ability he wants. He adds them to his strength and starts to feel stronger. He then talks about having skill and inventory screens. However, he still thinks this is quite strange and he thinks this is just like a game, but everyone around thinks he's crazy. Upon returning to his room, Jin-Woo decides to open his final reward, the random loot box. This time he got a key. He's confused because he always got stuff like pins or bandages. Upon checking the information, the system reveals he can use it to enter an instance dungeon in a specific location. He's confused with this, but thinks this is some sort of event that will help him get stronger. Meanwhile, nobody has raided the dungeon that appeared in the middle of the road, the news reveal in which locations new gates appeared. Therefore, everyone should expect traffic delays. Jin-Woo uses this time to visit his mother in the other hospital. 4 years ago, she suddenly collapsed in front of him. Turns out that she now suffers from the eternal sleep disease. This is a new disease that appeared when the dungeon gates appeared in the world, and it only affects one in every several 10,000 people. But in short, this only happens when the person is exposed to mana for several times and there's no cure. Jin-Woo returns to his room to do push-ups while remembering when he tried to have a normal job. He was slow and weak when suddenly it became easier. It turns out he just awakened as a hunter. He thought this was his lucky day as he could go into the dungeons and be able to pay for his mother's life support. His sister thought it was dangerous, but he told her to trust him. But in the end, even the weakest goblins were able to beat him. Everyone had to save him and complain about his skills. They even expressed that if didn't help the raid, his cut would be reduced. However, Jin-Woo simply smiled and apologized, but now if he puts all his ability points into strength, he will be able to become strong. He decides to check the instance dungeon key and goes to a station. He feels confident about his gear and ability to run if he needs to. He then pulls out the key and suddenly a key lock appears. He inserts it and a dungeon appears out of nowhere. He enters that portal and sees the system alert. Suddenly the dungeon exit gets blocked. Jin-Woo then sees normal people leaving the station and realizes this is a separate dimension. He thinks this kind of dungeon is something like a red gate. He thinks this is a mess because he cannot run away, but the system explains that he can only leave by defeating the boss or using a teleportation stone. He's confused, but he knows he must beat this dungeon. He still doubts himself. After all, he couldn't defeat the weakest monsters. How would he be able to solo raid this dungeon? He looks at his knife and knows he has no choice. He walks down the stairs and scouts the dungeon. Suddenly, 3 goblins appear in front of him. He's scared and remembers the last time he met a goblin he was stabbed. The monsters attack, but he manages to dodge and parry. He's still a total noob when it comes to fighting and almost gets deleted. He manages to roll like a god Dago and avoid the next incoming strike. He then rushes forward and stabs the goblin. The other 2 try to attack him from behind, but he dodges and follows up by killing the 2. He realizes that he became stronger, yet a wolf appears behind him. The wolf dashes at him and he tries to block. However, his cheap butter knife breaks again. He notices the wolf has a meal jaw and knows this is way stronger than the goblins. He wants to run, but his legs are shaking. He starts to freak out and thinks that he became traumatized by the last dungeon. The wolf runs at him and manages to scratch his face. Jin-Woo realizes that he has no healer. If he dies here, he's dead. The wolf then starts running again and lunges at him. The story continues. We see Wolf pounces on Jin-Woo, but he dodges away with some impressive acrobatics. He notices his body now feels much lighter than usual. He lands on his feet easily and he decides to overcome his fear and not give up his chance at a second life. He rushes at the wolf and lands a super punch that sends it flying. Jin-Woo notices his land steaming from the punch. He wonders if it is a result of his increase in strength. The wolf gets back to his feet and Jin-Woo realizes it's still much stronger than him. The wolf charges at him again and Jin-Woo counters with his punches, but this time they are not effective. He has no choice but to dodge out of the way to avoid the wolf attack. Jin-Woo realized that he would need some help to defeat the wolf. Since he has no party with him, he decides to make use of the resources at his disposal. He makes a run for it, but the wolf claws at his shin. He jumps to create space between them, but he knows he can't keep this up. He wishes he had some kind of magical weapon to use against the wolf. Then he remembers his secret inventory. He opens it up and draws out a magic sword, and as the wolf lunges at him again, he slices it cleanly into 2. A notification screen comes up telling him he has defeated the wolf and leveled up. Jin-Woo wonders how the sword got into his inventory because it cost a lot of money, which he knows he can't afford, but he decides not to worry about that. His wounds heal up and he realizes his body doesn't hurt anymore. 2 more steel-fanged wolves show up, but Jin-Woo isn't bothered because he now has a weapon to defeat them. He tries to lift up the sword from where it was plunged into the ground, but he can't. Jin-Woo starts to panic as the wolves get even closer. He desperately begs the sword to come out of the ground, and he pulls it one more time to dislodge it. The wolves are already lunging at him, but he swings the sword on time to take out one. He swings at the other ones, but it catches it with its steel fangs. Jin-Woo doesn't want the wolf to damage his sword after that it took him to get it. He kicks the side of the wolf to make it lose its grip and he defeats the wolf. Another wolf appears out of nowhere and Jin-Woo aren't a bit bothered because these wolves are nothing compared to the monsters he faced in the secret room. Jin-Woo faced the wolf, but it turns and runs away with its tail between its legs. Jin-Woo decides to rest against the wall. He realizes he's now level 2 after getting into actual combat. He never leveled up when he was doing daily quests. His wounds heal up and he notices his stats have all increased by 1 point, making a total of 5 points. Performing daily quests only gave him 3 points. He wonders how much his strength will increase with each point added to his stats. He doesn't know how his stats of intelligence and perception were quantified, but he knows how much his strength increases with each point added. He speculates that he'll be able to get more points the higher his basic ability of that stat is. He realizes he can actually get stronger, but he doesn't want to get carried away from defeating 5 small monsters. He gets up to check for magic gems on the bodies of the wolves. A notification comes up telling him he got an item instead of a magic gem, and he takes out the item, which is a wolf fawn. Jin-Woo wonders if the beast he encounters in this dungeon will differ from the gate in reality, since it all seems to be controlled by a game system. The shop screen comes up and Jin-Woo tries to buy something, but the game system tells him new players can't buy anything. He decides to sell the fawn and he gets 20 gold coins in return. He wonders what the equivalent would be in cash. He knows it can't be worth much because he's in an E-ranked dungeon. He picks up his sword wondering what to do. He has to defeat the dungeon boss or get the teleportation stone to get out, but he doesn't know where either is. He doesn't feel confident he can defeat the dungeon boss alone, but he thinks he stands a chance if he continues to level up. He suddenly looks up to see an entire pack of the wolves lurking in the shadows. The wolf that ran away went back to call the rest of the family, but Jin-Woo isn't scared anymore. They charge at him, but he charges at them all in defiance as well. He slashes and slices them as they dive him. One wolf gets on his back, but he shrugs it off. He's now surrounded by wolves, and he hopes to enjoy the battle, hoping the wolves don't die too easily. His past flashes before his eyes, and a smile crosses his face. He engages all the wolves, happy to battle as long as he gets to level up. He levels up as he cuts them down, and he finally defeats them all, earning the title of Wolf Assassin. Jin-Woo is sweating from exhaustion and he realizes his sword is almost broken. He realizes that his weapons are expendable and they'll eventually wear off, but he's glad the battle is over. He looks over his inventory to look at the items he got from the battle and what remains from his previous inventory. He gets the teleportation stone for completing the battle. He thought it would be much harder to get, and he contemplates leaving the dungeon, but he doesn't know if he'll get another chance to become stronger so easily. He wonders if the dungeon will disappear like a time-limited event in a game if he leaves. He tells like he's being toyed with by a supreme entity and he has no way of escape. He decides to store the stone in his inventory and continue deeper into the dungeon. Joo-hee gets a call from the Hunter Association and she apologizes for her earlier actions. They tell her a dungeon close by had a break and they need her help because they are short of healers. As Jin-Woo goes deeper into the dungeon, he defeats several new beasts and he levels up as he does so, making it easier to defeat each new beast. He takes a while to catch his breath. Through his battles, he noticed that the color of the names of the creatures shows that he's weaker on the same level or stronger than them. When he faced the first wolf, its name was red, but the names of wolf appearing are now colored white. Jin-Woo arrives at a flight of stairs and he perceives that he can't defeat the monster waiting at the end of it. He looks at his stats and he notices his level hasn't increased for a while now. His sword is also on the verge of breaking into bits, but he decides to go down the stairs. He gets to the end of it and he realizes the place doesn't look like a train station anymore. He hears a rushing sound and he turns to face it. He sees the monster coming to him at full speed, but he can't react fast enough. The monster knocks him back into the wall and his sword breaks. The area boss, which is a water snake, reveals itself and Jin-Woo looks at the color of its names and realizes they are the same level. He looks at the scales of the snake and he realizes his sword would be useless against it, but going barehanded would be even worse. The snake strikes at him, but he uses his sword to deflect the snake's attack. Since the snake attacks so fast and fiercely, he decides to weaken it first, but his sword can barely do anything against the snake scales. The snake returns for another attack, but Jin-Woo dodges out of the way, but he enters the range of the snake's tail. The snake smacks him with its tail and it sends him flying into the water. The snake goes for him underwater, but he quickly swims out to safety. The snake doesn't give him time to breathe as it attacks him once he's out of the water, sending him flying a great distance. As he gets back on his feet, he sees a train flying towards him and he has to run out of the way. He thought he was much stronger, but now that he's against the snake he feels so powerless. He grabs hold of his broken sword and wondering how much stronger he must become to stop being ridiculed constantly. He recalls when Song told him everyone was calling him the weakest hunter ever known mankind. Song told him to work hard and make them change their mind. The snake attacks Jin-Woo, sending him flying. Jin-Woo tries to regain his balance, but the snake doesn't give him a chance to look cool. It pins him against the wall with its body and crushes him till the wall breaks. Jin-Woo knows he was called that nickname because he was weak and helpless. He also knows that someone with overwhelming power will remain defeated, and the weak can do nothing but stand still when faced with the strong. People are looked down on if they are weak, even if they are considerably smart. Jin-Woo doesn't want to be gentle anymore. He wants to become strong, and that's why he went into the dungeon. He jumps up like a possessed maniac and grabs the snake. He tries to crawl up its body, but the snake knocks him off. Jin-Woo gets back on his feet. He vows not to give up till he gets stronger, and a blue aura engulfs him. His hair begins to stand on end, and the snake attacks, but he blocks it again, wearing out the snake scale. He feels like he's not giving enough, and he tries to put in more effort. Compared to when he was face to face against God, the snake was nothing. The snake attacks again, and Jin-Woo jumps into the air and he plunges his sword into a chunk on the snake scale. The snake tries to attack him again, but he blocks it and slices the snake's side to wear out the scales more. He jumps into the air, and the snake uses that opportunity to open up its mouth and swallow Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo's sword flies into the air, but the snake looks down to see him holding onto it. Jin-Woo uses his strength to crush the snake scale, and the snake is hurt. It bobs and weaves, trying to knock Jin-Woo off, but Jin-Woo holds on tight. He continues pressing down on the snake's neck with all his power, and he eventually defeats it. He levels up after the battle, and a smile crosses his face. He realizes he did get stronger after all, and he picks up the item he got as a reward for winning. It was a dagger which is twice as strong as his previous sword, and it comes with paralysis and bleeding effects. He also gets a vial of the snake's venom, and he thinks its effects are overpowered. He gets a notification that the dungeon will be reset since he has defeated the boss, and the station returns to its normal state. Jin-Woo walks out, but he can't see a person inside. He wonders what the time is. A soldier approaches him asking why he's around the station, and if he didn't hear the announcement. He sees Jin-Woo's sword and realizes he's a hunter. He apologizes to him and tells him he'll take him to the site. Jin-Woo follows the man, wondering what happened. The soldier briefed him about the dungeon break, and he asks if monsters came out. The soldier tells him most of the monsters have been defeated save for a giant magic beast. Jin-Woo would feel the monster from that distance, and he knew that was the boss of the dungeon. The huge magic golem engages the hunters as the police tried to keep citizens behind the barricade. The hunters are giving their all to bring down the golem, but their attacks aren't strong enough to weaken it because it has a high defense. Jin-Woo arrives at the site, and he realizes the hunters present don't have a great deal of teamwork. He can also see that most of the hunters are low ranks, and the battle was only prolonged because they had a tank whose rank was a bit high. He looks at the healers and notices there are 2 in D rank and 1 in B rank. The B rank healer is Joo-hee, but she isn't helping because she's dazed. A fellow healer riles her up to get her to help, but she still hasn't gotten over her encounter with God. She tries to make a healing circle, but she loses concentration and it breaks. Jin-Woo notices this, and he sympathizes with her, but he isn't scared anymore. They were facing a D-rank monster which is lower than the one he just faced. He pulls up his sleeves, getting ready to jump into action. The hunters can hardly hold on for much longer, and they pray for a higher rank hunter to arrive. Jin-Woo knows he can defeat the monster as long as he can break its defense. He decides to get it with his most powerful hit. He throws his sword with insane force to break the golem's defense. The hunters use that opportunity to defeat the golem. The tank wonders how they were suddenly able to defeat the golem when their attacks weren't effective a second ago. He looks at Jin-Woo's sword, wondering how the golem was defeated by it when the combination of their attacks did nothing. He asks the soldier who brought Jin-Woo to the site who threw the sword, and he tries to show the tank, but Jin-Woo is gone. The tank is terrified of Jin-Woo's power, and he wonders if Jin-Woo is a high-rank hunter. Jin-Woo looks much stronger now, but he didn't think he would break the monster defense with just one hit. He thinks its vitality was already low before he hit it. As he walks away, Joo-hee notices him. The story continues. We see the nurses in Jin-Woo's hospital gossip about how good his body now looks and how cute he is. Jin-Woo is doing his morning workout routine in his hospital room. The nurses wonder when he became so buff that they're always surprised when he takes his clothes off. When he first came to the hospital, he wasn't this buff, but they noticed his shape has improved considerably since he started working out. They wonder if it's humanly possible to gain muscles as fast as Jin-Woo did. One of the nurses knocks and enters Jin-Woo's room, but she's surprised to see him with his shirt off. He apologizes for having his shirt off, and she apologizes for walking in on him. He goes to put on his shirt, but the nurse can't help but admire the firmness of his muscles. She wonders if he always had such a good physique, but Jin-Woo asks her what she wanted to say to him. She snaps back into reality and she tells him it's his day of discharge. She asks him if he still has any discomfort, and he tells her he's fully recovered. She tells him to complete his discharge procedures at the counter when he's ready, and Jin-Woo thanks her for taking care of him. On a morning news show, the newscaster introduces Baek Hyun-ho. He is one of the 7 S-rank hunters with an impressive resume. She asks him what his life is like away from his missions, and he tells her he spends it training because daily training is indispensable. He tells her he would get rusty if he didn't simulate actual combat. She asks him if it's untiring, and he tells her that he's used to, since he previously worked as a firefighter. Back then, he knew that a small mistake could endanger the lives of his colleagues. Jin-Ah is watching the news when she suddenly realizes she's late. She rushes out of the room and calls out to Jin-Woo. He tells her to be careful on her way to school. Jin-Woo is rubbing his belly and Jin-Ah can't help but notice his abs under his shirt. She asks him if he's been working out and he tells her just a little. She notices the height difference between them. She asks him if the increase in height is also a result of his training. She goes to put on her school shoes before heading out, but Jin-Woo comes to hand her an umbrella she forgot. He gives her a friendly shove towards the door and she tells him goodbye. After she leaves, Jin-Woo goes into the living room and he looks at his daily tasks. He's completed the other except running, and he decides to do that later. He looks at his stats and he sees that he has unallocated points left. He knows he needs enough strength to deal damage, but it would be worthless if he can't hit his target. He sees the importance of the vitality and perception stats as well. He decides to distribute his points between strength, agility, and perception. He gets a call from his landlord and asks if his rent is due. The landlord tells him he's yet to pay rent for that month. Jin-Woo tells him he'll transfer the money and the landlord appreciates his response. He tells Jin-Woo to take care of himself and they end the call. Jin-Woo still isn't sure if he underwent a second awakening, but he can now kill goblins in an instant, so he should be able to earn enough to make a living. He sits on the couch and scrolls through open dungeons he can clear. He knows he has to get a high-level dungeon to get anything meaningful, but he won't be qualified because of his low rank. He contemplates a re-evaluation which will give him a higher rank and put him under the spotlight. With the increased attention he would be able to make more money, but he knows people with a second reawakening are rare and hunters whose stats increase with a level increase are non-existent. He knows how annoying the media can be and decides to drop the idea. He decides to keep his powers a secret till he understands it better. He gets a notification on his phone and he's surprised. He immediately puts on his clothes and goes out to a location. He completes his daily task in the process, and he's about to accept his reward when a man calls out to him. The man introduces himself as Hwang Dong-suk and Jin-Woo introduce himself to the man. The man figures out that he's an E-rank adventurer and one of his party members recognizes Jin-Woo. He tells the man Jin-Woo is famous for being the weakest hunter. Another of his members begins to laugh at Jin-Woo's nickname, but Dong-suk tells them to cut it out. He apologizes for their behavior, and he asks the man if he can join them to raid the dungeon. Dong-suk tells him he can tag along to make up for the numbers. He tells him the requirements to enter the dungeon and he tells Jin-Woo he won't get any spoils, but they'll pay him a commission. He looks at them and he sees there are 4 C-rank hunters and 2 hunters who are D-rank or lower. Jin-Woo asks the man what he will be doing, and the man tells him he will carry their luggage containing their stuff. Jin-Woo asks the man if he didn't bring a healer. The man tells him it's difficult for a private team like his to recruit a healer, but they have always managed like that. Though Jin-Woo's concerned, the man hands him the contract. He reads through and sees that the party won't be liable for any injuries he incurs. He signs it, and another hunter comes to introduce himself as Eugene-ho. He tells Jin-Woo he is a D-rank hunter, who was brought in to make up the numbers. Jin-Woo is impressed with his gear, and he thinks Jin-Ho is from a rich family. Jin-Ho asks Jin-Woo if the bags are too heavy, but he tells him he's right. He tells Jin-Woo he doesn't have to speak so formally. They arrive at the gate, but because of how huge it is, they are skeptical it's actually a C-rank gate. Dong-suk tells them the dungeon was given a C-rank by investigators. Jin-Ho wonders if it's okay to enter the huge gate, and Jin-Woo tells him only the magic flux matters. He tells him the association measures the flux and ranks the gate. Gates that are B-rank and above are handled by large guilds, and those below C-rank aren't very dangerous. Jin-Ho is amazed by how much Jin-Woo knows, and Jin-Woo tells him he has been a hunter for a long time. He confesses that it's his first time entering a C-rank dungeon, and Dong-suk tells his party to follow him. They get ready and enter the gate. The dungeon is dark, so Dong-suk tells one of his members to cast a light. He's surprised that there's no monster in sight and no light in the dungeon. There are usually luminescent stones in a dungeon. Jin-Woo remembers another dungeon he visited that was also pitch black. Jin-Ho asks Jin-Woo what luminescent stones are and he tells him they are glowing rocks common to cave-like dungeons. He tells him they are found on the floor or roof of caves and they emanate light. Jin-Ho is confused by the loads of gems and stones associated with dungeons. Jin-Woo tells him he will get used to it. They got deeper into the cave and Jin-Ho was still surprised there was still nothing inside. He asks Jin-Woo if there can be a dungeon without monsters, and Jin-Woo tells him to keep quiet. Jin-Woo listens hard and he can hear monsters round, but they choose to remain hidden. Dong-suk tells his party to get ready for a battle. Jin-Woo is surprised that all the monsters are moving together and rushing towards any light source. He tells them it's an insect-type magic beast and the party members aren't pleased to go against insects. They look at the different holes, trying to predict where the insects will attack from. They all get uneasy as the sounds of the insects get closer. Jin-Woo listens for the insects and he perceives them in a hole above the party. One of them opens up the hole and Dong-suk tells them he'll attract the insects while the others attack them from behind. Jin-Ho tells Jin-Woo to stay by his side so he's protected. Dong-suk uses his taunt skill to attract all the insects to himself and the other members attack the insects. Jin-Ho wants to get into the action but they tell him to stay back. One of the members uses his strongest attack to take down a lot of the insects and the party pushes forward. Jin-Woo is impressed with their teamwork but he feels frustrated. They defeat all the insects and Dong-suk asks Jin-Woo how he predicted where the insects would come from. Jin-Woo tells him it was his intuition. One of the party members calls out to Dong-suk and they notice the insects were killed by something that bit them and not their swords or magic. They figure out that there could be a monster who preys on the insects. Jin-Woo tells Jin-Ho to be cautious because his gear is so expensive. Elsewhere at the association gym, some hunters are working out when they hear a huge explosion. Some are surprised, but one hunter tells them it happens when their guild master is working out. They are impressed with his skills, but Yunho doesn't feel like it's enough for a warm-up. Back in dungeon, Jin-Woo tells Jin-Ho more about dungeons, and he asks Jin-Woo if he can manage the luggage in such a huge dungeon. Jin-Woo tells him he's fine earning more without fighting, but he's suspicious because the deal is too good to be true. He's still uneasy that the group doesn't have a healer and they had to make up monsters. They find more half-dead insects and they're even more suspicious. They think the dungeon boss is around the corner. They're about to move ahead and Dong-suk asks his party member to light up the cave. They move forward, cutting through cobwebs, thinking the boss room is ahead. They find a lot of mana crystals that could make them millionaires. Everyone is fantasizing about what they'll use their newfound wealth to do. Jin-Ho looks at Jin-Woo's contract and he tells Dong-suk that Jin-Woo should get some crystals since they aren't considered spoils. He tells Jin-Ho, Jin-Woo will get his share as soon as they defeat the boss. They have to move the crystals before defeating the boss because the gate to the dungeon will close. They decide to use the opportunity. Since the boss is sleeping, Dong-suk asks his member for his tools, but he tells Dong-suk he left them back at their car. Dong-suk tells Jin-Ho and Jin-Woo to stay back while they get the tools to move the crystals. Jin-Ho isn't comfortable with it, but Dong-suk assures him they are safe because the boss is asleep. Those C-rank dungeons require 8 people to clear them. Jin-Woo then remembers Dong-suk said they've always cleared dungeons with 6 members. He wonders why there aren't regulars to fill up the number deficit. As they walk out of the room, Dong-suk tells one of his members to seal off the room. They seal off the room and Jin-Ho realizes they've been betrayed. Jin-Woo remembers when Song-yi told him about people who do such things and get away with it easily because there is no surveillance in the dungeons. Jin-Ho tried to break through the wall but it was too strong. The dungeon boss awakens and approaches them. Jin-Woo almost feels powerless, then he remembers his encounter with God and he gains confidence. He tells Jin-Ho to step back because he will defeat the monster. He brings out his sword from his inventory and walks forward to face the boss. The story continues. We see one of Dong-suk's subordinates asks him why he's complicating the whole process of eradicating Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho. Dong-suk tells him they risk waking the spider if they do that, and that will prevent them from getting them mana crystals. He's convinced that an E-rank hunter and a D-rank hunter cannot defeat the spider. He decides to wait for the spider to eat them up and sleep off before they raid the room and take out the mana crystals. The hunters wonder if they'll have to blast the seal open again when they want to get the crystals, but Dong-suk knows that'll wake the spider up. He tells them he's spotted some paths above the cave they can go down from. One of his hunters asks what they'll do if the boss doesn't fall asleep. Dong-suk tells him they'll have to take it down in that case. He decides to salvage Jin-Ho's gear if they're unable to get the mana crystals. Since his equipment is so valuable, he decides to look up Jin-Ho's family so they can attend the funeral when the family makes arrangements for it. Q1 thinks the spider will be even more infuriated with the noise of them sealing the road. Dong-suk asks him if he thinks he'll be able to handle the boss by himself. Q1 confesses that he can't handle the boss and Dong-suk agrees with him. He tells him he should not underestimate the boss because Jin-Woo and Jin-ho cannot possibly leave the cave alive. Jin-Woo are set to face the boss, but Jin-ho tries to talk him out of it. He knows that only a B-rank hunter or those of higher ranks can defeat a C-rank monster. He tells Jin-Woo he won't be able to do it, and it's better they find an escape route out of the cave. Though Jin-Woo achieved his second awakening and leveled up, he can't help but feel that Jin-ho is right. Though he was able to defeat the D-rank venom-fanged water snake in the instant dungeon, he feels like he's too weak to take on a C-rank. He knows that the spider is miles stronger than the snake and the golem he defeated, but he doesn't feel any pressure from it that scares him. He's finally strong enough not to feel any pressure from a C-rank monster. With how much he has leveled up, he's confident he can defeat a C-rank monster. He smiles hungrily at the thought of battle and he rushes towards the spider. Jin-ho is surprised by this, but Jin-Woo are in full hunter mode and the boss is his prey. Elsewhere, Gun-hee sits in the passenger seat of his car and his driver enters the car. Gun-hee tells him he's exhausted from the numerous meetings he's had with media outlets and government officials. He tells him he's not good at beating around the bush and avoiding questions. His driver asks him for a sparring match to put him in a better mood. Since his schedule is free, this brings a smile to his face. He tells his driver that though he's a withered old man, he can refuse the request of a youngling for his guidance. Back in dungeon, Jin-Woo is engaged in a furious battle with the boss. The boss tries to attack Jin-Woo with its sharp limbs, but Jin-Woo dodges out of the way each time. He tries to cut one of its limbs, but his dagger doesn't have any effect on it. He's surprised at the hardness of the boss's armor. The boss tries to attack once again, but Jin-Woo dodges out, but he's surprised by the power of its attack. He knows that if he's hit by one of such attacks, he'll lose his life instantly, so he decides to be very careful. He rushes at the boss again, and he blocks every attack the boss throws at him. Jin-ho stands away from the action, amazed at Jin-Woo's movement and battle expertise. He can't believe Jin-Woo is an E-rank hunter. He thinks Jin-Woo must be a false ranker. False rankers deliberately control their magic rating so they can get a lower rank. There are rumors that false rankers are psychopaths who enjoy taking the lives of other hunters. Jin-ho isn't so comfortable around Jin-Woo and he sinks to his knees, wondering why he came for the expedition. He whispers out to his father pathetically, hoping to be saved by some miracle. Jin-Woo continues to battle the boss, but he's hardly dealing any damage because of the boss's hide. Jin-Woo sees that he's getting quite fatigued and he decides to finish off the boss before he's too tired to move properly. He remembers the special abilities of his dagger and he decides to aim for the boss's weak spot so it can take effect. He decides to aim for his eyes, but as he runs towards it, the boss releases acid. Jin-Woo doesn't expect this, but he jumps out of the way to avoid it. The boss is tougher than Jin-Woo expected with its array of abilities. Jin-Woo knows he can't keep up the battle if things continue the way they are, so he decides to close the distance and land a fatal hit. He uses his new dash skill to quickly get into the air, and he strikes down at the boss, but the dagger's perk doesn't take effect. Since one hit doesn't trigger the dagger's effect, Jin-Woo decides to hit it multiple times. Jin-ho continues observing the battle and he wonders if Jin-Woo will be able to see it through. Jin-Woo rushes at the boss even faster, and he tries to will his body to go faster, but he's too fatigued. His body stops and the boss swats him into the wall like an annoying bud. Jin-Woo lays there, unable to move, and the boss is about to land the finish move, but Jin-Woo quickly claims his daily reward and makes a full recovery option. He dodges the boss's attack, but Jin-ho thinks he was caught by it. Jin-Woo comes up from the boss's blind side and he hits its weak spot with his dagger multiple times. The paralysis and drain abilities of the dagger take effect and he eventually defeats it. He levels up after this and he heaves a sigh of relief. Jin-Woo was thankful he didn't claim his daily task reward previously. Jin-ho stares at him in awe. He can't believe Jin-Woo was able to defeat the boss all by himself, and he's convinced that Jin-Woo is a false ranker. Jin-Woo takes valuable materials from the boss, wondering how much it would be worth. Jin-ho walks up to him and he offers to help him with his luggage and the gems. He offers him a bottle of water and Jin-Woo takes it and wondering why Jin-ho was suddenly so formal. Jin-ho behind mining the mana crystals and Jin-Woo refreshes himself. Dong-suk and his party come through one of the tunnels and they're surprised to find Jin-ho and Jin-Woo alive. Meanwhile, Gun-hee is sparring happily with his driver in the teaming room. He parries his driver's attacks and he lands a devastating blow, but the driver blocks it. The force of the blow sends him flying, but he manages to land on his feet. He's bruised from training with Gun-hee, and Gun-hee asks him if he's alright. He tells Gun-hee he's fine and he thanks him for his guidance. Gun-hee thanks him for helping him relax. The training room is in bad shape from their session, and the driver commends Gun-hee for being very powerful. Gun-hee tells him his training will pay off when he finds himself in dire situations in a dungeon and he can't rely on his hunter skills. In the dungeon, Dong-suk's party can't believe the boss was defeated. They think it must have been an overgrown spider to be defeated so easily. They know that they shouldn't be able to defeat the boss even with Jin-ho's gear, so they conclude it was a weak boss. Dong-suk's subordinates ask him for orders, and the man tells Jin-ho that he's impressed with his gear. He found out that Jin-ho's father was a wealthy man, so he tells him to lay waste to Jin-woo if he wants to go free. Dong-suk is sure that they had figured out that his party recruits hunters to make up numbers, and they take them out and steal their loot. He tells Jin-ho he can become their accomplice if he takes out Jin-woo, or he'll take them both out. Dong-suk thinks Jin-ho took the boss down with his gear and he doesn't want to fight against him because he's afraid his gear has hidden perks. He wonders why Jin-ho isn't making a move on Jin-woo, and he makes fun of him for being afraid of Jin-woo. Jin-ho finally approaches Jin-woo, but he stands with him and prepares to fight Dong-suk. Since Jin-ho is siding with Jin-woo, Dong-suk decides to take out Jin-woo since he's weaker. Jin-woo prepares to face off with them, but suddenly an urgent request comes up on his screen. Q1 sees that Jin-woo is distracted and he casts a powerful spell at him that knocks him into the wall. Elsewhere, Hee-jin is standing along the road and some of her friends call out to her. They go into a cafe and they begin to catch up. They talk about happenings in their respective guilds. Hee-jin asks Gina how her training with Miss Cha-hae for the Orange Dungeon went. Other girl then tells her it was annoying because they were all struggling with a rank monster, but Cha-hae was able to defeat it easily. All the trainees were so surprised by how easily she defeated it. A trainee aspiring to be the next team captain was embarrassed by this. Gina asks Hee-jin about the hunter aspiring to be the captain in her guild, and she tells her she doesn't like him much. Gina tells them they are all lucky to be in big-time guilds. Gina tells them she's had the opportunity to hear different rumors arriving from different sources. Hee-jin asks her what the rumors were about, and she tells her she heard there are strike teams with suspiciously high fatalities. Back in dungeon, Jin-ho looks back at Jin-woo who's knocked out. Dong-suk tells him Jin-woo has passed away and Jin-ho isn't happy to hear this. Jin-woo wonders how he forgot about the kind of world he lives in. He's about to lose his consciousness, but he notices the system telling him to take out the people who are trying to take him out. He realizes that the system wants him alive and strong, so he gets back on his feet. Dong-suk is surprised to see him stand up, but Jin-ho is relieved. Jin-woo brushes himself up and he decides to use the system to his advantage. Dong-suk teases Q1 for holding back on his attack. Jin-woo remembers that the strong always prey on the weak. They tease him for being the weakest hunter in the history of humanity, and he asks them if they're ready to be prey instead of hunters. One of Dong-suk's subordinates decides to take care of Jin-woo. He asks Jin-woo what a low-rank hunter like him is going to do. He's in the middle making fun of him when he suddenly loses his voice. Jin-woo makes quick work of him with his dagger and everyone is surprised by this. The system counts the body and they wonder how he was able to defeat their colleague. Though he was just obeying the system, Jin-woo can't believe he just took a life. He knows he would have lost his if he didn't, and he decides to see the battle through to get stronger. They all attack him at once, but he blocks their attacks and dodges out of the way. He takes down another hunter and another one tries to take him out, but he takes him out as well. The others wonder how a low-rank hunter can move so fast. Jin-woo takes out all the hunters one by one and Dong-suk tells Q1 to attack him. Q1 casts a spell, but Jin-woo dodges it and he takes him out. Only Dong-suk is left and Jin-ho can see that Jin-woo is now much stronger than he was when he fought the boss. Dong-suk can't believe Jin-woo wiped out his entire team, and he figures out that Jin-woo was hiding his true strength. Dong-suk tells Jin-woo he's noticing like his subordinates. He uses his reinforcement skill to make his skin impenetrable to Jin-woo's dagger. He reasons that Jin-woo isn't at full strength since he just fought the boss and his subordinates. He rushes at Jin-woo and tries to strike him down, but Jin-woo is way faster than him and he smashes him into the ground. He tells Dong-suk that though he's strong, he has been leveling up the entire time. Dong-suk can't believe that Jin-woo is an E-rank hunter. He begs Jin-woo to show him mercy in return for payment. Jin-woo is surprised he's begging for mercy after trying to end his life so many times. Dong-suk tells Jin-Woo he won't get away with taking his life, and Jin-Woo tells him nothing that happens in the dungeon gets out. He finishes him off and the dungeon begins to close, since the boss has been defeated. They come out of the dungeon and an official is surprised that only the low-rank hunters survived. She notices Jin-Ho's gear and she is surprised he has the latest gear equipped. Jin-Woo is surprised he was rewarded for taking the lives of the hunters. He gets a new murderous intense skill which reduces all abilities by 50%. The official thinks they survived because of Jin-Ho's gear. While Jin-Woo hid behind him, Jin-Ho laughs nervously at her comments and she leaves them alone. Jin-Ho thanks Jin-Woo for having his back and suddenly it begins to rain. Jin-Woo is glad he gave Jin-Ah his umbrella. Somewhere in the city, a huge man is staring out the window ready for some action. The story continues. We see Chief Jin-chul receives the report of the 6 hunters who lost their lives in the C-rank dungeon. He sees the survivors are D-rank and E-rank, so he assumes they ran away from the dungeon, which is common. His assistant tells him they didn't run away, but they killed the boss and escaped the dungeon. He tells Jin-chul that Jin-Ho has expensive gear, which he's sure was vital to their success. Chief Jin-chul tells him to investigate the case if he thinks there's something fishy going on. He tells Jin-chul that Jin-Woo was the second survivor and the chief remembers him as the sole survivor from the double dungeon. His assistant tells him one of the survivors who lost their lives in the dungeon was Dong-suk. The chief is concerned that the brother of Dong-soo lost his life in the dungeon. Jin-Woo returns home and his sister welcomes him. She's surprised by the souvenirs he brought home and she asks him if something good happened to him. He tells her he's not sure what happened to him was good, but he was able to save up for their mom's expenses and their needs. Jin-ah thinks it's unusual for Jin-Woo to spend money because he's usually stingy. They are having dinner and Jin-ah asks him about his last raid. She thinks his companions must be strong since he came back with no injuries. This makes him remember Dong-suk and his squad and he becomes speechless. Jin-ah asks him if they were able to defeat the enemy, but Jin-Woo is lost in thought and he pops open his beer mindlessly. He remembers how he was able to defeat Dong-suk and his gang easily, despite their differences in strength. He didn't hesitate back then and he didn't despise them either. He knew if he would have run if he was still his old self. He wondered if he also became braver as he became more powerful. His beer is dripping into his lap, but Jin-Woo doesn't notice this. Jin-Woo is feeling remorseful because his opponents were human and not magic beasts. Jin-ah calls his name and he snaps back to reality. She asks him if he's feeling sick, but he lies that he was thinking about the change from the convenience store. Jin-ah tells him not to scare her like that and he decides to stop thinking about the past. He knows he has to get stronger so he can protect his family. He decides to do the same thing if he gets jumped by otter hunters again. He gets a notification saying he has ingested a harmful substance and the system automatically detoxifies him. He tells Jin-ah that he's done eating and she tells him she'll eat the remnants. He tells her not to complain when her overeating makes her get bigger. Jin-Woo goes into his room and takes a sip of beer, but the system clears the alcohol from his body and he realizes that he can't get drunk at all. He suddenly gets the rewards from his side quest, which grants him health and longevity. He knows it's the reward from the double dungeon and he now understands why his body is able to automatically clear out toxins. A lot had happened since then and he didn't have time to check his rewards. He was still uncertain about a lot of things. Jin-Woo falls asleep, but a knock on his door wakes him up. Jin-ah comes into the room and tells him someone named Jin-Ho called for him. Jin-ah sees the beer can on his desk and tells him alcohol is toxic, but he tells her he's fine. He leaves his room to go meet Jin-Ho in a cafe. Jin-Ho apologizes for suddenly calling him out and Jin-Woo tells him he didn't expect to see him again. He tells Jin-Woo he's glad they are meeting again because he saved his life. Jin-Woo thanks him for giving him the magic gem and keeping the incident with Dong-suk secret. Jin-Ho tells him he understands it was self-defense. Jin-Woo asks him why he called him out and Jin-Ho tells him he plans to build an attack team, but Jin-Woo immediately refuses. Jin-Ho tries to get him to listen, but he tells Jin-Ho he doesn't want to hang out with a rich guy. Jin-Ho tells him he just needs his help in 19 raids and Jin-Woo thinks he wants to become a guild master. Jin-Ho begs him to hear him out and Jin-Woo decides to give him a chance. Jin-Ho explains that he wants to get a guild master's license and to get that, he needs to participate in 20 raids. He tells Jin-Woo that mission was his first. He tells Jin-Woo he can pass the written exam because he studied hard, but he's not confident in his combat skills. Jin-Woo knows he's the second in his family construction company and he tells Jin-Woo he's doing it for the company because his father wants a guild established. Jin-Woo is surprised by this, but he knows dungeons have a lot of valuable stuff that can be used to make everyday items. He figures out that the company wants to have its own hunters conquer dungeons and take all the spoils. Jin-Ho tells Jin-Woo his father wants to hire an S-rank hunter as the guild master while his brother becomes the assistant. Jin-Woo knows there are only 7 S-rank hunters in the nation, and Jin-Ho tells him the S-rank hunter who hasn't joined the guild has retired. Jin-Woo figures out that Jin-Ho is going to poach the S-rank hunters from other guilds, and he advises him against it because the guild will become his enemy. He tells Jin-Woo his brother isn't powerful enough, and Jin-Woo figures out that Jin-Ho wants to get stronger so he can become the guild master. Jin-Ho tells him his father will believe he has gotten stronger if he completes his raid with a low-level hunter instead of a high-level. Jin-Ho knows Jin-Woo should be a B-ranked hunter at best, and he's sure teaming up with him would be productive. He slides him some building plans that he wants to give him as a reward for the raid. Jin-Woo looked through it and he thinks the amount is too trivial because he could someday become higher than an S-rank hunter. Jin-Woo knows teaming up with people who don't understand the concept of leveling up would be dangerous. He rejects Jin-Ho's offer, and Jin-Ho begs him that he would keep his secret for a lifetime. If he offers to help him, Jin-Woo gives him a deadly glare and Jin-Ho almost jumps out of his skin. Elsewhere, we see Dong-Soo tells his assistant to bring him the documents containing the details about Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho. His assistant Laura brings it into the room and he's pissed out that his brother lost his life. She tries to comfort him, but he cuts her off and demands for the documents. She hands it to him and he asks her what would happen if he took the life of someone in another country. She can't believe he's considering doing that. She tells him he would be prosecuted by the country if it has treaty laws with hunters. She tells him if the country doesn't, their own country would persecute him. She tells him he can be shown leniency if he negotiates with the government. He tells her to adjust his schedule, but she tells him changes to his schedule will affect the guild's operations. He asks her how his schedule is looking and she tells him it's fully booked. He tells her to clear it for later and she goes to arrange it. He sees that Jin-Ho is a D-rank and Jin-Woo is an E-rank hunter. He hopes they are still alive when he pays them a visit. Back with Jin-Woo, he goes out for his morning routine and Jin-Ah tags along. He's surprised she decided to work out today and she tells him studying all the time will be harmful to her. He thinks she's working out because she ate too much chicken. They go for a jog and Jin-Woo suddenly asks her what she would do with 30 billion. She wonders why he's asking and he tells her it's just a random question. She tells him she would take care of their mom's medical bills and pay off her college tuition fees. He asks her what she would do with the rest and she tells him she would save it up because it was a lot of money. Jin-Woo gets his answer and he tells her to keep up at her own pace. He leaves her in his dust and she can't believe how much stronger a hunter is compared to a human, even though he's at a low rank. Jin-Woo looks through his daily quests and he sees that it keeps counting. When he exceeds the gold, he does more push-ups to confirm and he decides to see how far he can run. Jin-Ah finally catches up to him, but he tells her he's going for another lap and she's dumbfounded. He decides to perform double of his daily quests and the daily quest becomes a secret quest. He accepts his reward for the secret quest and the system gives him a number of boxes to choose from as his reward. He goes for a blessed random loot box and it appears on his hand. It opens up and a miniature sun comes out which turns into a key. The system tells him the location of the dungeon. The key opens and he sees that the dungeon is an S-ranked. He sees that he can get the ingredients for the elixir of life, which can cure all illnesses, and he cracks a smile. Later, he goes to visit his mom and the hospital and he decides to clear the dungeon to get the elixir of life. He begins to open up the gate to the dungeon and he knows that there would be powerful beasts in the dungeon, similar to the ones that gave the S-rank hunters a hard time. He opens it up regardless and he wonders if he can deal with such beasts at his level. He enters the dungeon and he's a bit scared at the sight of it. He isn't too bothered because of teleportation stone he can use to get out of the dungeon if things don't go his way. A three-headed monster called the Hellgate Cerberus suddenly appears, but Jin-Woo is unfazed. He knows he can't give up because he has to get stronger and keep leveling up. He summons his dagger and stares at the monster in defiance. His wolf assassin title gives him more strength and he rushes at the Cerberus. He uses his dash skill to go even faster and he slices at the monster, but it doesn't deal damage. He slashes the monster several times, but all his attacks are harmless to the monster. He's surprised the gap between them is still so huge after he used his title skill. He decides to use his murderous intent skill, but it gets cancelled out by the Cerberus. The monster attacks him, but he dodges and stabs one of its heads. He casts the paralysis and life debuff of his dagger on the monster, but it cancels it out. The monster attacks him once again, but this time he doesn't dodge on time. The monster sinks its teeth into his arms and Jin-Woo screams out in pain as he loses some of his HP. The monster throws him down and Jin-Woo is shocked to see he lost a third of his HP just from one of the monster's attacks. The monster is about to squash him, but Jin-Woo dodges and gets back on his feet. The Cerberus uses its rage skill to double all its abilities for 3 minutes and it slashes at Jin-Woo with its paw. Jin-Woo can barely react to the attack before he's hit with so much force and he loses more of his HP. He uses his full recovery skill since he has no choice and attacks the monster. He stabs the monster eye, but the system tells him the monster no longer feels pain. The monster throws him off its head, but as soon as Jin-Woo regains his balance, the monster lands a series of attacks that halves Jin-Woo's HP. The monster keeps attacking and Jin-Woo's HP drops to 30%, his passive skill of willpower kicks in and he gets a 50% damage reduction buff. The monster runs at him and he kicks up some dust to distract it. Jin-Woo hides behind a rock and he's glad the system issues him warning at critical times to prevent his death. He decides to hold out for 3 minutes to let the monster's skill end before he thinks it's too dangerous. He's about to use the teleportation stone, but the monster suddenly attacks him and he loses it. He quickly jumps to safety and the system shows him his HP is quite low. He wonders how he'll survive and he decides to go shopping while the monster looks around for him. He gets 3 bottles of an exclusive healing potion, but each bottle only restores 100 HP. He sees the venom of the water snake in his inventory and he decides to take it since he's immune to toxins. The venom kicks in and grants him a 20% physical damage reduction. The monster finds him and attacks him, but he doesn't give up because he can still move. The monster's skill ends and Jin-Woo uses that opportunity to land as many attacks as he can manage. He slices and slashes the monster, but it remains unhurt. It attacks Jin-Woo and sinks its teeth into him once again and Jin-Woo's HP almost drains out. Jin-Woo uses his last strength to keep attacking the monster's weak spot repeatedly and the monster finally falls. The system shows that he has defeated the Cerberus and he levels up considerably, his wounds heal and he heaves a sigh of relief. The system shows him the items he got for defeating the Cerberus. He gets a key that opens the door to the demon's castle. He suddenly gets a random item which opens up to reveal the pattern of the elixir of life. He sees that he needs 3 materials to craft the elixir and these materials can be found in the demon's castle. His experience with the Cerberus made him realize that entering the demon castle will definitely lead to his death. He decides to return to the dungeon in the near future, when he's strong enough to clear it. The story continues. We see Jin-Woo pays a visit to his mom in the hospital. He looks at the requirements to craft the elixir of life, which can cure all diseases. He wonders if the elixir would be able to wake his mom from her eternal slumber. Though he doesn't have the 3 items needed to craft the elixir, he knows where to find them, but he knows he's not strong enough to enter the place holding the item. He decides to level up even more and get much stronger. Jin-Woo sets up a meeting with Jin-Ho in a cafe, and he accepts his proposal to join him in 19 C-rank raid missions. Jin-Ho is surprised Jin-Woo agreed, but Jin-Woo tells him he only agreed because of certain circumstances. He gives Jin-Ho a condition before he accepts the proposal. He tells Jin-Ho only 2 of them would go on the raid missions. Jin-Ho wonders how only both of them would conquer the C-rank dungeons. Jin-Ho reminds him that they need at least 8 people to enter a C-rank dungeon, and Jin-Woo tells him to find people to make the numbers up, just like Dong-Suk did. Jin-Ho wonders if the missions won't be too dangerous, but Jin-Woo tells him they can complete the 19 raid missions as long as they both remain safe. He tells Jin-Ho his father is sure to acknowledge him if they go through the raid missions unscathed. Jin-Ho considers this and decides to accept Jin-Woo's condition. He tells Jin-Woo that he'll take care of the extra members and the dungeon gates. Elsewhere, Cha-Hae is jogging around a racetrack. She decides to take a break and she dehydrates herself. She stretches her muscles and she realizes someone is hiding behind her. She tells him to come out and she asks him why he's stalking her. He's not surprised that she was able to detect him since she's an S-rank hunter. He tells her he couldn't find a good time to talk to her and he apologizes for interrupting her training. He offers her his business card and we can see his name as Masakazu Tamanaga. Jin-Ho is in a car with his dad, and his dad recalls when the dungeon gates first appeared. Since then, politics, news and social events have been linked to the dungeon. The dungeon houses several infrastructures which are important to the common folk and he knows without it they won't be able to survive. He knows only hunters can bring such valuable resources from the dungeons. The hunters are managed by a government agency known as the Hunter Association. The Hunter Association classifies hunters' registers and manages them. The association is also responsible for assigning and power to dungeons and bearing the responsibilities of dungeon breaks. He knows the government agency can only maintain operations while the guild controls the major resources centered around hunters. The guilds obtain profit acquired from the dungeon. The 5 major guilds in the country comprising those are the Hunters Guild, the White Tiger Guild, the Felm Guild, the Fame Guild and the Knights Guild have monopolized all the resources. He tells Jin-Ho he can't just sit back and watch them do that, because the resources vital to common people will fall into the wrong hands. He thinks it should be people who have supported the nation's development that should be responsible for managing the resources. He tells Jin-Ho that is the reason they must establish a guild. Jin-Ho agrees with his father. He and his brother jointly run a guild that headhunts S-rank hunters, which is quite risky. He's not sure his current self can handle a guild alone. Jin-Woo goes out for a jog to complete his daily task. He sits on the park bench and he opens up the game system. He notices the system doesn't count the extra tasks anymore, and he wonders if he can still get a reward like the previous secret quest. He was hoping to get another item from the cursed random loot box, just like the Demon Castle's key. He realizes he may get the key to an instant dungeon. He opens the random loot box, but he gets a bingo card that has already been partly played. He's disappointed by the reward, but he understands that it's a random loot box, so he doesn't worry about it. Jin-Woo leaves the park and he walks along the city streets. He looks at his status on the game system and he realizes just 3 ability points are not enough to make him strong. He decides to level up quickly, but he can't do anything but wait for Jin-Ho's C-rank mission raids. He remembers a centipede in a dungeon, and he decides to go back to slay them to get more points, but he realizes he would be able to escape more easily, and he may not get points from defeating the centipede. His game system closes as he gets a message from the Hunter Association inviting him to participate in a D-rank gate mission. He sees that he'll not be able to fight alone since the Hunter Association wants to make a team and he wonders if he should decline. He decides to take the mission because it's better than doing nothing and he can't waste any time. Elsewhere, Song's apprentices are training in a dojo. One of the apprentices confesses to his master that he's still not strong enough to defeat him. The master tells him it's understandable that he can't win, but the apprentice still feels ashamed. He wants to spar with the master while he's in an optimal state, but the master is surprised he's not giving up. He gets an urgent call-up message and he said that low-rank hunters are nothing but errand boys for the association. His apprentice asks him if he's ever considered retirement, and he's surprised. He remembers terrible scenes from his previous raid, and he realizes he may be a hindrance since he lost one arm. His apprentice tries to explain that he didn't mean it like that, but the master tells him he wants to do as much as he can for the world before he loses his life. A hunter tells his wife he got called to a raid mission and she tells him to consider giving up his hunter profession. She tells him the profession is too dangerous because a lot of people lost their lives in his previous mission. She reminds him that he almost didn't make it out, but he tells her they need money to get their daughters through school. She agrees with him and he reassures her that the association won't send them to a dungeon that's too dangerous for them. He tells her the last time was just an exception, and she apologizes to him for worrying unnecessarily. She tells him to be careful, and his daughter wonders if he's strong. He assures her that he's very strong and he can defeat powerful monsters. Yunho goes to see Jongin in his office and he's pissed Jongin deceived him. Jongin feigns ignorance and Yunho tells him he pushed the media interview on him. Jongin tells him he saw the interview on TV and he thinks he did very well because his speech was heartfelt. Yunho is pissed Jongin is pushing his responsibilities on him. Jongin tells him his attitude and honest character will represent the hunters and that's what their chairman wanted. He tells Yunho he isn't suited for that. Yunho decides to drop the accusations and he wonders what Jongin summoned him. Jongin tells him he wants to inform him that Eugene Construction, which is the business name of Jinho's dad, wants to establish a guild. Yunho tells him he already knew about it, and he heard they were looking for people to fill up the guild. He knew they were poaching some of his squad members and Jongin realizes he's meddling unnecessarily since he already knows. Yunho is sure Jongin and knew he was aware of all this and he decides to find out what Jongin really wanted to tell him. Juhee gets a call from her mom who wonders if she's alright, since she doesn't call her often. Her mom wonders how her work is going and she tells her it's going fine. Her mother wonders if working as a hunter makes her uncomfortable, since she's so timid. Her mom heard she was a B-rank hunter, but she's not convinced she's strong enough for that rank. She thinks she's a burden to other hunters, so she tells her to come back home and help with the house chores. Juhee gets angry and she tells her mom to stop making decisions for her. She tells her she'll make her own decisions, and she ends the call. She's so pissed her mother thinks she's a burden to other hunters. She remembers how useless she was in previous raids, but she decides to give it another go. She leaves her room, but she gets a message from the Hunter Association asking her to participate in a D-rank gate raid. Cha-hae walks through the Hunter Association building and she stumbles upon Yoonho, but he doesn't pay her any attention. She goes into Jong-in's office and he wonders what he can do for her. She tells him she was approached by a scout from Eugene Construction and she wanted him to know about it. She hands him the business card and she tells him they are launching a new guild and they want her to join them as the guild master. Jong-in figures out that she turned them down and he's relieved. She tells him she saw Yoonho on her way in and she wonders what they were talking about. Yoonho sits in a room alone with a glass of scotch. He remembers his conversation with Jong-in, who asked him about Jeju Island. Yoonho wondered why he asked him about the island. Jong-in reminded him that the island was sealed off since the failed raid, and they gave the public updates about the island annually. He knew people were trying to forget about the island and what it represented. Yoonho could understand why people would want to forget about the island. Jong-in told him he could never forget about that island, no matter how much people praised him for being the strongest hunter. He told him he intended to clear that island in the near future and he needed him to be on the same page. He wanted them all to gain strength and gather allies, so they could sway the public's opinion about the island. Yoonho now understood why he arranged the interview with the media and why he began training new hunters. Jong-in wondered if Yoonho also left something behind on the island, and Yoonho remembered his friends he left behind during the raid. In a dark room in an unknown location, a suspicious man makes a deal with another man to take the lives of some people. Jin-Woo tells Jin-ah he's heading out and she wonders why he has worked during a holiday. She realizes he has been very busy lately and she can't believe he was the same guy who had to take long breaks between each mission so his injuries could heal. She wonders if his training is paying off, and he tells her he can make a steady living now thanks to his training. He heads out and she's surprised he's heading out without his stuff. He tells her he would be alright without them. She tries to stop him, but he walks out. She's surprised because he's going for a raid, not making a quick trip to the convenience store. The dojo master Mr. Song knows his sword will be useless to magic beasts and his martial arts would be useless in a dungeon. He stumbles upon Jin-Woo and he's surprised to run into him. He can see that Jin-Woo has changed a lot since the last time they met. He remembers Jin-Woo lost his leg, but Jin-Woo tells him it was healed when he woke up in the hospital. Mr. Song thinks it was a skilled healer who restored his leg, and he's happy to see Jin-Woo in good health. Jin-Woo is sad because Mr. Song didn't get his arm back, but Mr. Song tells him he had gotten used to it. Jin-Woo wonders what Mr. Song is doing around the area, and he tells him he was answering a summon from the Hunter Association. Jin-Woo is surprised Mr. Song was summoned by the association just like him. They arrive at the gate and Jin-Woo sees the hunters who survived the encounter with God. They're too ashamed to look him in the eye because they sacrificed him for their own safety. Song is suspicious that only the survivors from that dungeon were reunited. Joo-hee is so surprised by how much Jin-Woo has changed since she last saw him. A car suddenly arrives at the gate location and 3 prisoners step out of it. They are glad a lady is part of the group. They start hitting on her, but an association hunter shuts them up. An association official briefs them. She tells them the prisoners are substitute hunters who would be joining them for the mission. They are surprised they would be fighting alongside criminals, but the official tells them the prisoners won't cause them trouble since they want to reduce their sentence. She tells them they would be accompanied by a B-rank hunter called Kong Tae-shik, and she assures them he'll be able to handle the prisoners. Jin-Woo suggests that Joo-hee sit the raid out, but she decides to go since he's going. Tae-shik introduces himself to the group and he wonders who would lead the raid. Mr. Song decides to lead, and he thanks Jin-Woo, making sure they came out alive the last time he led them into a raid. Tae-shik is suspicious of Jin-Woo, but it's time for the hunters to enter the dungeon, so they gather at the gate and proceed through it into the dungeon. The story continues. We see inside the dungeon, the prisoners are actually doing a good job wiping out some goblins. Mr. Song wonders who the real beasts are and demonstrates his own power. The group of goblins is eventually wiped out and Mr. Song impressed by how much stronger Jin-Woo has gotten. Even Joo-hee points out how Jin-Woo hasn't gotten hurt yet, and she hopes that no one ends up needing her to heal them. Mr. Song is still amazed as even Jin-Woo's aura is different. Tae-shik has the move forward, but they find a split in the path. The dungeon has been much easier than they expected, so they determined that it should be fine to split up. They will be taking on a bit more risk, but they will be able to clear the dungeon faster. Jin-Woo is able to sense that the dungeon boss is down the path on the right side, but he doesn't tell anyone. He hasn't been leveling up much from the weak goblins, so Jin-Woo requests that his group go down the right side path. They split up, but Tae-shik oddly stares at Jin-Woo. Kim's group member is the other coward, and Kim decides that they will have to apologize to Jin-Woo for abandoning him on the first raid. They are sure that he won't accept their apology, but Kim determines that he must try if he wants to continue being a hunter. Down the other path, the prisoners easily wipe out another group of goblins. Taeshik strangely asked if they will be able to do the same against humans, and they point out that it would make no difference. A look into the past shows that Taeshik was told that Sung Guy's daughter was assaulted by 3 men. His daughter took her own life afterwards, but this guy was furious, since the 3 guys would be set free from prison in just a few years. To make things worse, they're hunters, and hunters are allowed to participate in raids to reduce their sentences. This is incredibly unfair since his daughter will never get to come home. The man brought 3 million yuan and offered to give it to Taeshik if he eliminates the 3 prisoners. Taeshik is absolutely crazy, as he now tells the prisoners what he will tell the inspectors when he leaves the dungeon without them. He will say that the prisoners were eliminated by a pack of 100 goblins. Kim continues down his path, but he is shocked to find that it touches to Taeshik's path, and he finds Taeshik massacring the prisoners. Taeshik tells the prisoner that he was told to make them suffer, but he is interrupted by Kim. The cold-blooded Taeshik eliminates the last prisoner and decides that he will have to change his plans as he makes his way towards Kim. Jin-Woo thinks about how Taeshik saw him at the hospital and he just hopes that he doesn't remember him. Just then they hear screaming and they rush to find the dead prisoners. Kong has been eliminated as well, and Jin-Woo shocked when he sees Kim in bad shape. Joo-hee heals him, but Mr. Song tells that this was not the work of a magical beast. The weapon used was too sharp and whoever used it avoided finishing him off multiple times. Kim has given up on surviving, but Jin-Woo reminds him that he has a family. Jin-Woo demands that he stay alive, otherwise he won't be able to keep blaming him. Kim uses his last breath to apologize to Jin-Woo and he passes away. Just then, Taeshik tries to eliminate Joo-hee but Jin-Woo stops him. Taeshik is impressed with how fast he is and Mr. Song realizes that Taeshik is responsible for the massacre. Mr. Song is shocked since Taeshik is part of the Hunters Association, but Taeshik just wants to tell them his plan. Instead of blaming the goblins, Taeshik will say that the prisoners eliminated all the other hunters. He will then say that they tried to take him out, but they couldn't do that, which will be why he was the lone survivor. Mr. Song holds Jin-Woo back as he doesn't believe he can take on Taeshik. Mr. Song will fight him instead, but he thinks about how long is the B rank, 1 whole level above him. Joo-hee gives him a strength buff and Mr. Song tries to use his sword skills to take Taeshik down. Taeshik manages to avoid even being touched once and he commands Mr. Song for knowing his stuff. Jin-Woo analyzes the situation and can tell that Mr. Song is managing to hold his own, but he isn't fast enough to win. Taeshik manages to land a devastating blow, but he gets annoyed when Joo-hee quickly heals Mr. Song. Taeshik decides to take her out first, but Mr. Song stops him. Taeshik underestimated the old man, so Mr. Song explains that he has trained S-rank hunters before. His blade is outmatched, but Taeshik points out that the power Mr. Song has been given have their limits. There is no chance a mage type like him can defeat an assassin type, so Taeshik brings him near death. Joo-hee too frightened to heal him, so Taeshik prepares to end Mr. Song's life. Mr. Song uses his fire ability but Taeshik is just too quick. He realized that Mr. Song used his sword to make him lower his guard against magic. Mr. Song was waiting until Taeshik tried to end his life to surprise him with a fire blast. Taeshik saw right through his plan though, and Mr. Song will now pay with his life. Just then, Jin-Woo finally steps in to stop the fight. Taeshik demands to know who he is, so Jin-Woo explains that he's simply an E-ranked hunter. Taeshik doesn't believe him, since he would need incredible reaction speed to stop the attack he just used on Mr. Song. Taeshik can tell that Jin-Woo was hiding his power and determined that he had a second awakening. The others are shocked and Taeshik just now remembers Jin-Woo from the hospital. The mana reader only read 10 at the time, so Taeshik thinks that the second awakening must have come after that. This doesn't make sense though, as it doesn't explain why Jin-Woo was able to survive the double dungeon. Taeshik determines that it actually doesn't matter, so he prepares to eliminate Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo wants to know what happened just now, so Taeshik explains that he was just carrying out justice by taking out the prisoners. Jin-Woo couldn't care less about them, but he wants to know why he eliminated Kim and Kong. Jin-Woo points out that Kong could have done it quickly, but he didn't. Instead, Taeshik seemed to have tortured and toyed with them. Another look back to when Taeshik spoke with the father shows Taeshik explaining that he has received huge offers to join the largest guilds. However, he chooses to work for peanuts in the Hunters Association. The reason he has chosen this path is because he finds people much more fun to kill than beasts. A fight breaks out between Taeshik and Jin-Woo, and the two spectators are amazed by their blinding speed. Taeshik can tell that they have practically the same build, but he determines he has much more experience fighting high-ranked opponents. Taeshik uses this experience to take control of the fight, but he is shocked when Jin-Woo asks him to be a little less bloodthirsty. It's too late though, as Jin-Woo's system has taken notice. The system, just like last time, informed Jin-Woo that there are people present that want to eliminate him. Jin-Woo is then once again given a quest to eliminate his opponents. Jin-Woo is engulfed by a dark power, but calling this confused since he thinks he should have the advantage in this fight. Jin-Woo instantly attacks, and Taeshik shocked when he realizes that he has been poisoned. The two continue fighting, but Taeshik has something special to show him as well, and he disappears. He explains that this is the stealth skill. It conceals the sight, sound, and even his smell. Only a tiny fraction of hunters can obtain this skill, and no one knows he has it. Taeshik manages to hurt Jin-Woo, and he tells the others to stay back and wait for their turn. Taeshik is certain that Jin-Woo won't be able to do much now with an injured leg, but he's shocked when Jin-Woo instantly heals himself. Taeshik is in disbelief since he has never heard of a combat hunter who could also use healing magic. Jin-Woo is completely unpredictable, and this makes him very dangerous. Jin-Woo has seriously changed, as he explains that he just lost another one of his emotions, and now he doesn't even need to get angry to kill filth like Taeshik. Taeshik realizes that Jin-Woo has taken human lives before, and Mr. Song shocked to hear this. He determined that Jin-Woo has probably had to make some tough decisions in a short amount of time, and that is why his appearance was not the only thing that changed. Taeshik moves in to continue attacking, but he is shocked when Jin-Woo was able to track him just by sensing his bloodlust. Taeshik still has a trick up his sleeve, but everything stops when Jin-Woo activates his murderous intent skill. Taeshik is surrounded by darkness, and he is stunned when Jin-Woo's blade pierces his chest. As Taeshik's life fades away, he points out that he and Jin-Woo are the same. They are both killing machines, and the only reason why he is dying is because he was simply weaker than Jin-Woo. Taeshik still wants to know what Jin-Woo is. He has assassin skills, healing and debuffs, and Taeshik has never heard of someone like that. Jin-Woo doesn't tell him anything, but Taeshik points out that Jin-Woo was able to eliminate him, so his E-ranked act is over. Jin-Woo decides to tell him something and just explains that he is someone that gets stronger with every fight. Taeshik can tell that Jin-Woo will keep getting stronger and stronger, but he has a warning for him. If he goes too far searching for more and more power, that same power might take control of him. Jin-Woo's quest is complete, and he got some rewards. Jin-Woo has noticed that the stronger he gets, the more he feels like something inside of him is falling apart. His friends thank him for saving them, but Jin-Woo tells them to leave the dungeon. They are shocked to hear that Jin-Woo plans to clear the dungeon alone, but they realize that he is strong enough to do it. Outside, Jin-Chul is shocked to hear that Taeshik was killing in secret. He is shown the only survivors of the mission Taeshik was on, and he's surprised to find that one of them is Jin-Woo. He apologizes for what happened, but more importantly, he wants to know who was the one that defeated Taeshik. Jin-Woo realizes that he won't be able to keep his secret anymore, which means he will have to cancel his deal with Jin-Ho. Just before he admits to everything, Mr. Song lies and says that he was the one that eliminated Taeshik. Mr. Song is only a C rank, so he explains that he only won the fight because he had the help of a healer. Jin-Chul is skeptical as Taeshik was a top B rank hunter, but he accepts Mr. Song's answer. Just then, Jin-Woo reminds himself that he cannot get overconfident. He could until before, but Jin-Chul was an A-rank hunter. He can sense his immense power now, and he can tell that it is current strength. He wouldn't stand a chance against this guy in a fight. Mr. Song determines that Jin-Woo has a good reason for keeping a secret, so he tells Jin-Woo that this is just him paying him back for what happened in the double dungeon. That night, everything has been settled, and Ju-hee wonders if Jin-Woo remembers the stone he gave her. The story continues. We see Jin-Woo and Ju-hee take a little walk while they discuss how much Jin-Woo has changed. Ju-hee is the complete opposite of him, as she hasn't changed at all, and she realizes that she is too timid to be a hunter. She should really be participating in A-rank raids, but she chooses the lowest rank ones instead. It's not terrible since it allowed her to meet Jin-Woo, and she began healing him. He would always get hurt, but she could never forget how his eyes always had that determined look in them. Ju-hee returns the crystal he gave her and reveals that she will be retiring. She will be going back to live with her parents, but the two agree to hang out if they ever see each other again. A look back shows that Jin-Chul was very skeptical of Jin-Woo. He didn't believe that an E-rank like him could defeat the B-rank Taeshik. Jin-Woo was already found to not have had a reawakening though, so Jin-Chul just let him be. He did, however, issue him a warning. Dong-suk's brother Dong-soo has heard that Jin-woo and Jin-ho were the only survivors after his brother was eliminated, so he may be coming after them. This is extremely shocking since Dong-soo is an S-rank hunter. Dong-soo likely doesn't care about all the facts, and he is the type to be upset just because Jin-woo survived and his brother didn't. Unfortunately for Jin-woo, the law is powerless against S-rank hunters, and they have the potential to bring forth either a miracle or a calamity. One of these monsters is after Jin-woo, so Jin-chul recommends that he get his family and leave the country. Jin-woo just determines that this is another reason to have to become stronger, since if he doesn't then he won't survive. Jin-woo arrives to meet with Jin-ho, but he's very confused by what he sees. Jin-ho explains that this is their strike team. He prioritized finding people who are qualified hunters but have reasons why they can't work and are struggling to make a living. Jin-woo points out that he hired a high schooler, but she points out that she is a qualified hunter, just like them. She gets discouraged though when Jin-woo figures out that she's an E rank with no raiding experience. It doesn't actually matter though, as Jin-woo informs them all that they will be waiting outside while he and Jin-ho take care of everything. They will all be getting paid 3 million yuan each, which is a great deal since they won't actually be doing anything. The only thing is that they can't tell anyone about it, otherwise they will have to pay back 10 times the amount they were given. Jin-woo received a stealth runestone for defeating Taeshik and he uses it to learn the stealth skill. Jin-ho is ready to go and Jin-woo's shocked to see that he has put on some more insanely expensive armor. Jin-woo proves how illogical it would be to wear that armor and demand it's take it off. Jin-woo allows him to at least keep the helmet though, and the two enter the portal. The other hunters think they are crazy for going into a C-rank dungeon alone, but they don't really care since the contract is already finalized. Jin-woo's sister wonders where her friend Sung-yi is, and we see that she's the high schooler on Jin-woo's strike team. The hunters discuss how full strike team would take 2 hours to complete this raid, so when they see you appear out of the portal, they assume that they just ran away. Of course they are shocked to see that the gate is closing after they exit, which means that they have cleared the dungeon. The hunters stare in disbelief, but Jin-woo just tells them to hurry as he wants to go to another portal. Their goal is to hit 3 raids in one day, but the hunters are all still shocked that they even completed one. During another raid Jin-woo destroyed a bunch of goblins, while Jin-ho finishes up mining, Jin-woo finishes up the goblins and levels up. The next raid is a success as well and general levels up even more. Days passed and the two just keep clearing dungeons by themselves. They begin to face stronger and stronger monsters, but Jin-ho can tell that Jin-woo is getting much stronger as well. Jin-woo's stealth skill is really useful and his dash skill levels up. He earns a couple more skills and finds that they're really powerful when he uses them on a wolf. Jin-woo has a bunch of new skills now, but not enough mana to use them for very long. He takes a potion for this and decides that he will focus on increasing his intellect ability going forward. He also decides against returning to the Demon Castle right now, since he would consider himself to only be somewhere between a B rank and an A rank hunter. Just then, the system reveals that he has reached the required level for a job change quest. Elsewhere, the manager of another guild named Sang-min is told that there's a strike team spending double the market rate for the rights to buy some C-rank gates. Their leader is the rich kid Jin-ho, but their team seems to have just been thrown together. On recognizes the name Jin-woo from the double dungeon incident, and he gets a feeling that there's something interesting going on. Elsewhere, Jin-woo and Jin-ho emerge from another portal victorious. Jin-woo wonders if Sung-yi has some kind of eye problem, but she says it's nothing. Back with Sang-min, his assistant is shocked to hear that he thinks that Jin-woo has reawakened. Jin-woo managed to survive 3 major disasters. There was a large body count every time, but he was always among the survivors. Reawakening is the only way this could be possible, so Sang-min heads off to scout the promising rookie. Sang-min arrives at the portal Jin-woo's in, but he is shocked to see that it looks like some kind of picnic. Sung-yi explains that the area is off limits, and must point out to them that she is a hunter. She admits to being part of the strike team, and Sang-min is shocked to realize that Jin-woo left the entire group behind to enter the dungeon himself. Sang-min thinks Jin-woo might be his biggest find yet, but he surprisingly just leaves. The guys emerge from the gate and Jin-woo reveals to Jin-ho that he's busy tomorrow. He won't be able to go on any raids, so they hold off on a few of them. We then get a glimpse of a very strange scene, and Jong-in wakes up from the nightmare. He takes a look at some paperwork and determines that it's almost time for the reconnaissance mission on Jeju Island. Jin-woo finishes up his day of raiding and Sang-min introduces himself as the manager of the White Tigers Guild. The White Tigers Guild is one of the country's best, and they're always on the lookout for promising new talent. Sang-min thankfully gets right to the point and offers to pay Jin-Woo double what Eugene Construction is paying him if he joins his guild. Sang-min is confident that an E-ranked could never reject this offer, but he is surprised when Jin-Woo wants to know how much the White Tiger Guild headquarters is worth. It's worth 50 billion, so the guy is shocked when Jin-Woo reveals that the construction company is giving him a building worth 30 billion. Jin-Woo shows him proof, but Sang-min reveals that he isn't qualified to offer them their 50 billion building. Jin-Woo leaves as he has lost interest, but he does want to know how Sang-min heard about him. Jin-Woo strikes fear into this guy but making sure that he wasn't snooping around and he disappears. Sang-min realizes that Jin-Woo used stealth to cut him, and he is shocked when he thinks about how Jin-Woo is a reawakened with the stealth ability. Jin-Woo tells him not to turn around, so Sang-min explains that he was just investigating who was buying up so many gates. Jin-Woo demands to know who else knows about him, but Sang-min explains that it's just him and one of his subordinates. Jin-Woo warns that if people start hearing about him, they will be the first people he suspects. Sang-min agrees to keep everything a secret, so Jin-Woo reveals himself again. Jin-Woo has to keep buying the gates for a while, but this causes problems for the guild, since they need to train recruits. Jin-Woo agrees to let them buy 3 gates from him, but Sang-min is shocked when Jin-Woo tells him that they will have to pay 300 million yuan for each. The guy begs him to lower it to 200 million and Jin-Woo surprisingly agrees. The two make the deal for 3 gates, but their interaction is not over yet, as Jin-Woo wants to give him something. He tells Sang-min to close his eyes and open his mouth, so Jin-Woo gives him a potion to heal the cut on his face. Jin-Woo reveals that he trusts Sang-min, but he reminds him to keep his mouth shut. Sang-min's assistant wonders how things went, and Sang-min tells them that he thinks that Jin-Woo might be an even bigger deal than he thought. The next day Jin-Ho confirmed that they have received the 600 million yuan. Jin-Ho point out that they were going to cancel those gates anyway, so he can't believe that Jin-Woo managed to get so much for them. Jin-Ho wants to know more, but Jin-Woo explains that it's a trade secret. Back with the White Tiger Guild, Sang-min realizes that Jin-Woo scammed him, as several C-rank gates appeared and they are all selling for less than 70 million yuan. Jin-Woo sends him a message stating that they're even now for Sang-min spying on him. Sang-min realizes that Jin-Woo is not someone to be messed with, but he's glad to have gotten his contact information. Elsewhere, we see that Jin-Woo moves on a road trip as he goes to find out what his job change quest is all about. The story continues. We see Jin-Woo arrives in some forest far away from civilization, because he has no clue what to expect from the job change quest. He has encountered 2 dungeons that were accessible with keys, and the only quest he has been forced to take immediately were the penalty and the emergency ones. This job quest 1 is optional though, and he has even been given time to decide. Jin-Woo assumes that it's an important event that will make him stronger by earning skills best suited to his job, so he decides to accept and the gate opens. Jin-Woo just now remembers that he didn't do his daily quest and decides to do it later. He declares that the real game starts now and he enters the gate. Elsewhere, Jin-Ho has a meal with his father and they are met by his brother. In the dungeon, Jin-Woo finds that he won't be able to use potions or his full recovery. He won't be able to leave until the quest is complete either, so he will have to be very careful. Just then Jin-Woo hears something approaching and he prepares himself. It turns out to be an armor-type beast and Jin-Woo quickly attacks it. He is shocked to find that his attack did nothing and he is caught off guard by the monster's power. Jin-Woo lands another attack, but it's no good. He dodges several attacks and declares that he has fought more powerful creatures with even harder exteriors. Jin-Woo then uses his bare hands and tears the monster apart. Jin-Woo isn't too happy though, since he pretty much wasted one use of his Fatal Strike skill. He can't be upset for too much longer though, as he has company. Back with Jin-Ho, his father wonders how Jin-Sung's efforts to establish the guild are going. He has heard that every S-rank he sent an offer to ended up declining. This is true, but Jin-Sung explains that he's in talk with hunters from other countries. Jin-Ho realizes that this will be more competition for him, and he is shocked when Jin-Sung reveals that he knows he has been working on something in secret. He knows that Jin-Ho has been trying to establish himself by buying up C-rank raids, but he warns Jin-Ho not to get in his way. Jin-Ho doesn't say anything, but he is sure that Jin-Sung wouldn't be talking this way if he knew how powerful his partner is. Back in the dungeon, Jin-Woo was putting in work destroying the monsters. He determines that he will have to rest soon, but he senses something and eliminates another monster. He can't believe that it was using stealth, and on top of that, a mage that can use light magic has appeared. This is all pretty strange as Jin-Woo feels like the armor on the first monster combined with the skills of these monsters makes him feel like he's revisiting his old battles. The quest is much tougher than he expected, but he once again analyzes the situation mid-battle. He goes over what it will take to defeat each one of his enemies. The armored one won't take damage without enough strength, and the stealthy one can be detected without enough perception. The mage needs to be countered with intellect, but Jin-Woo hasn't increased that stamp very much. His fatigue is building up quickly, so he will have to end the fight soon. Elsewhere, we see that Jong-in meets with the other hunters as they are ready to head to Jeju Island. Back in the dungeon, Jin-Woo managed to defeat the monsters. He finds that he has received the chest plate and realizes that he hasn't done much with gear yet. Jin-Woo puts some on and is glad to see that it can go invisible and it doesn't restrict his movement. Jin-Woo's level has gone up, and he also has plenty of golden items. His fatigue has recovered as well, so he continues through the dungeon. Jin-Woo opens a giant door and a gust of wind that comes out of it gives him the chills, inside of some kind of throne room, and he is shocked by what awaits him. The sound he hears and the presence he feels makes his entire body remember something. This pressure he feels is on the same level of what he felt during the double dungeon. Jin-Woo is in disbelief since all that intensity is coming from one opponent. This enemy is a knight commander named Igris. His name is in red, and Jin-Woo determines that this guy is nothing like any enemy he's ever fought before. Igris intently attacks with intense speed, and Jin-Woo shocked to see that this guy chops through pillars like they are tiny tree branches. This monster quickly overpowers Jin-Woo with his next attack, and Jin-Woo has no chance of keeping up with him. He gets tossed around, and Jin-Woo is in disbelief at how much of an insane monster this guy is. Jin-Woo shows immense speed of his own as he throws a flurry of attacks, but his blade does nothing against the knight's armor. Jin-Woo just barely manages to block an attack and he gets tossed back. He determines that they are equal when it comes to speed, but Igris is much more powerful than him. This guy is extremely dangerous and Jin-Woo wonders if he has any chance of beating him. Jin-Woo doubts that he can win without a weapon, but he can only think of one way to deal any damage through the armor Igris wears. Jin-Woo puts away his dagger and Igris surprisingly throws aside his weapons as well. Elsewhere, Jong-in calls the chairman Go and thanks him for approving the operation. The chairman tells him to be careful, but Jong-in is already fully aware of the danger. He knows that this expedition is simply to assess threat levels. They will just prod the enemy and see how they respond. Jong-in is as diligent as ever, and he explains that it's because the last 3 done Jeju Island never really ended for him. Back in the dungeon, Igris wasted no time in crushing Jin-Woo. He tosses Jin-Woo again like he's just a toy and he lands a barrage of punches on him. Jin-Woo gets sent through a wall and he's shocked by his opponent. He was blocking all the punches, but he still feels like he lost 500 HP. Jin-Woo is glad that he put armor on, since he would surely not be alive right now if he hadn't. Jin-Woo concedes that he cannot power this guy, so he boosts his speed instead. Jin-Woo flies around him and manages to finally push him back. He tries several more attacks afterwards, but it soon becomes very clear that he won't be able to catch him again. The guy tells him around even more and Jin-Woo notices that the skill he used also increased his defense. He's still getting destroyed by this guy as he gets him back into the room, but Jin-Woo continues to fight back. His efforts paid off as Jin-Woo uses a spectacular move to land a kick right on Igris' head. Jin-Woo realizes that this might actually be bad for him, and the knight attacks with even more ferocity. Jin-Woo just continues to take an absolute beating as Igris tosses him onto the throne and stares down at him. Back home, Jin-Ah leaves some dinner for Jin-Woo and goes to study. We then also get a look at Jin-Woo's mother at the hospital. Back with Jin-Woo, he's in really bad shape as Igris takes his sword and prepares to end Jin-Woo's life. He ruthlessly goes in for the finishing blow, but Jin-Woo shockingly stops him with one hand. Jin-Woo declares that he hasn't lost yet and pushes Igris back. He summons his blade and manages to stab the knight through the opening in his helmet. Jin-Woo then uses all the power he has to push Igris' back and pushes them up against the wall. Igris tries to use Jin-Woo's blade, but Jin-Woo points out that his dagger doesn't change owners, it just goes back to his inventory where he can summon it again. Jin-Woo sends his blade through the Igris' skull, but the attack is too shallow. He determines that he has to go deeper, so he uses all the power he has left to push a blade further into the Igris. Jin-Woo uses every fatal strike he has and lands the most powerful strike he has ever dealt. Igris has gone completely limp. Jin-Woo removes his blade and a notification reveals that he has won the fight. Jin-Woo realizes that there was a huge gap between them in every category, and determines that him winning was really a fluke. If he made even just one mistake, he would have died. Jin-Woo then receives 4 rewards. One is 1.5 million gold and another is the S-rank helmet that Igris wore. The key to the demon's castle was S-rank, but Jin-Woo has never had gear that was this high quality before. Amazingly, the helmet boosts his stats and reduces damage taken by 15%. Jin-Woo also receives a rune stone for this skill called the Ruler's Hand. The final reward is an instant teleportation stone. It can't go into his inventory, so he wonders why he would be given one right now. It wouldn't make sense to be given one after clearing the dungeon, so Jin-Woo wonders if the job change quest isn't actually over yet. Just then Jin-Woo was shocked to see several portals open. A notification pops up and reveals that the job change quest actually begins now. Jin-Woo was instructed to survive as long as possible, so he can earn advancement points. These points are required so that he can be assigned to a higher class, but Jin-Woo has no clue what that means. A timer pops up and Jin-Woo realizes that he will be facing infinite waves of enemies. He's glad to see that his opponents aren't as strong as Igris, since he is sure he would have been overwhelmed in mere seconds. Jin-Woo is sure that he can handle these guys, but can't help but point out that there are a whole bunch of them. Jin-Woo's fearless though, and charges right at them. We then watch as the other hunters fly off to Jeju Island. After some time we return to see that Jin-Woo is still fighting, as the gate just keep tossing out more enemies. The real goal of this quest is to last as long as possible, so Jin-Woo uses his stealth skill. He decides to manage his mana so he can buy himself as much time as possible. Jin-Woo's plan is completely ruined though when a mage breaks his stealth. Jin-Woo goes right back to fighting, but things are even worse than before since he won't be able to use stealth or murderous intent anymore. Jin-Woo takes his sword right to the back and he is shocked when he realizes that it's only been 5 minutes. Things are getting far too dangerous, and Jin-Woo determines that he won't be able to continue. He hates to do it, but he decides to teleport out of the dungeon. Before he can know, a monster knocks a stone out of his hand. Jin-Woo is in real trouble now as the huge group of enemies descend on him. The story continues. We see Jin-Woo continues to get thrashed about by the monsters and there is no way out now that he has lost the teleportation stone. The only way he will be able to survive is if he defeats them all, so Jin-Woo gets back to fighting. It's a pretty dire situation though, as the stamina is at its limit and he can't use stealth or murderous intent. Of course, our protagonist never gives up and he's determined to survive. Jin-Woo continues to fight for his life, and he thinks about how he has lived his entire life at the bottom. He could never give up on striving for more, and this moment is no different. Jin-Woo's knuckles are all messed up and his heart begins to race. Just then, the monsters start talking. The voices talk about how Jin-Woo's nickname is the weakest hunter of all mankind, as he gets it several times. The voices mock him for once having to go to the hospital after going through an E-rank gate. Just then the imaginary Mr. Song and Joo-hee appear, and they tell Jin-Woo to stop forcing himself to fight. Jin-Woo's younger self appears after that, and he tells Jin-Woo that he has come a long way already, so that should be good enough. His old self can't even recognize the new Jin-Woo as he is much taller and in much better shape. However, he explains that the changes were only on the surface. Deep down Jin-Woo was still weak and he is about to die again. The old Jin-Woo declares that Jin-Woo will always just be an E-rank hunter, a dreamer who never learned his place in the world. Jin-Woo manages to avoid some attacks, but he can't manage for long, as he gets crushed. Young Jin-Woo tells him that this is what he deserves, since he was so quick to think that he was ready for this kind of fight. These words begin to convince Jin-Woo as he wonders if he really hasn't changed. Just then, a notification reveals that the time is up on his daily quest, and he will have to be penalized for not completing it. Luckily, this means that he will be taken to the penalty area. Jin-Woo now realizes that luck really is a factor in skill, and young Jin-Woo determines that whoever is behind all this doesn't want him to die just yet. He says goodbye and Jin-Woo was taken to the penalty zone. When he arrives, he is grateful that this penalty saved his life. Jin-Woo wonders though if it really was luck or if it was the system keeping him alive. Jin-Woo decides not to overthink it, and he uses some potions to recover his stamina. Unfortunately, a notification explains that if he is too seriously injured, potions won't restore his HP. he will either have to wait to heal naturally or try and get restored by leveling up. Just then a bunch of those monsters from before appear, and Jin-Woo declares that as long as he doesn't die, any pain he feels will only make him stronger. Back home, Jin-Ah notices that Jin-Woo hasn't returned, and she wonders if he got a girlfriend. She determines that that would be impossible, and she just hopes that he will remember to be there for her guardian-teacher meeting. Back with Jin-Woo, he has defeated the monsters he was once terrified of and has recovered his health from leveling up. He has 10 minutes left in the penalty zone, so he uses it to buy the Night Killer dagger. This weapon is perfect as it deals 25% more damage to armor-type beasts. Jin-Woo uses the ruined stone he got from fighting Igris, and it gives him the active skill called Ruler's Hand. Surprisingly, it doesn't use any mana, and it allows him to affect objects without touching them directly. He remembers Igris using this on his sword, but Jin-Woo tests it and finds that he can't move large objects yet. Time is almost up, so Jin-Woo declares that he will have to rely on a little bit of luck to carry him to the end. Jin-Woo gets teleported back to the dungeon and he gets ready to fight again. Back with the other hunters, they're getting closer to Jeju Island. Jong-in is told that multiple sources of mana have been detected in the water, and Jong-in is shocked by what he sees. In the dungeon, Jin-Woo was very pleased by how his Night Killer dagger's performing. He can't shake a strange feeling he is getting though. He keeps killing the beast, but it doesn't actually feel like he is. That isn't all, as Jin-Woo was concerned about the mages who have been casting spells without actually attacking. Just then Jin-Woo realizes that they are responsible for opening the gates and summoning the knights. He decides to target the mages and finds that defeating one of them makes some of the knights fall apart. Knowing this, he targets the rest of them and takes control of the fight. The mages just do their best to hide behind the knights, but Jin-Woo manages to take out another one, leaving 3 mages left standing. These tricky last 3 combine their power to summon a golem, so Jin-Woo makes his way up to higher ground. He manages to disable it for a moment and thinks about how the dummy ages must have thought the one strong monster was better than several small ones. Jin-Woo points out that this is wrong though, since having fewer targets makes it easier to go after the mages. Jin-Woo finally manages to wipe out all the mages, but the golem is still standing. Our protagonist has become so strong that he uses sheer force to destroy the golem. With that, all the monsters are defeated and the notification reveals that he has finished the job change quest. Now he will be able to switch to a more advanced class with the points he earned based on his performance during the quest. He doesn't get to choose apparently, and notifications begin to pop up with several messages. They state that whatever path the player takes, it is littered with corpses and the stench of blood remains. Furthermore, the player craves great power and blaze his own trail without relying on others. It mentions how a shadow army will follow the player's orders, and Jin-Woo shocked to see that his new job class will be Necromancer. This doesn't make sense to him at all since he hasn't put anything into his intellect stat. Necromancers are usually a magic type class that summon undead monsters as servants. Jin-Woo though has an assassin's build. His main stat is strength, and all his skills fit that style of fighting. If he gets a class like Necromancer, then all the effort he put into his current build will be wasted. Just then Jin-Woo was relieved to see that he can reject it. He declines, but this is some points out that Necromancer is a hidden class and it asks him again if he really wants to decline it. Jin-Woo gives it a second thought and wonders if it being a hidden class means it has some kind of special power. Jin-Woo wishes he had an example to compare it to, and he realizes that it's pretty similar to the summoning magic the mages were using. Encountering them seems like too much of a coincidence, so Jin-Woo wonders if this job change quest was pre-arranged by the system. The idea of summoning beasts like the mages piques his interest. The mages weren't very strong on their own, but Jin-Woo knows that he is. There is no rule that says necromancers can't fight on the front lines, which is what he would do. Jin-Woo determines that if classes work like stats do, then as he levels up, his skills and necromancy will too. This means that the shadow army the system talked about will likely become stronger as a result. Jin-Woo gets excited about the idea of no longer solo leveling and he accepts the necromancer class. Just then a dark power bursts from beneath his feet and the system starts awarding him points based on his performance. Jin-Woo did amazingly well during the quest, so his total advancement points exceed the class threshold. The dark power erupts even more and Jin-Woo begins to flow, and the advancement is soon complete. Jin-Woo was then shocked when he sees that he already moved on from the Necromancer class all the way to the Shadow Monarch class. He also receives unique class skills and 10 ability points. Jin-Woo wonders if the quest is finally over, but he begins to hear sounds that seem to be coming from people that are in pain. Jin-Woo can now see a dark shadow coming from the monsters, and he's able to use his skill called Shadow Extraction on them. First, he must designate a command word, so he chooses arise. As soon as he says it, Jin-Woo ecstatic to see the first members of his shadow army. Aside from shadow extraction, Jin-Woo also has a skill called shadow storage. Shadow extraction lets him drain some of his mana to create shadow soldiers. Shadow storage allows him to hold onto those shadow soldiers and summon them whenever he wants. The only thing Jin-Woo needs to be mindful of is that the extraction can fail depending on the strength of the target and the time since death. There is more to this ability, as Jin-Woo sees that he summoned both the knights and the mages and they come in different ranks too. Jin-Woo gets excited when he wonders if he can even extract S-rank shadows, and if its strength reflects how strong they were in real life. Jin-Woo rushes to Igris and finds that extraction is possible. There is a limit to the number of extractions and how many he can store, so Jin-Woo releases 11 soldiers. Jin-Woo turns back to the Knight Commander, Igris the Blood Red, and says the word arise. Igris's shadow begins to emerge, but a large burst of power pushes Jin-Woo back and the extraction fails. Jin-Woo only has 2 more tries left, but his second attempt fails as well. Back at the Hunters Association, President Go reminds Jin-Chul that hunters can never grow their power unless they undergo a reawakening. That is why they train their combat techniques and gather allies. Back with Jin-Woo, he speaks Igris and reminds him that he is a warrior, cutting down foes with his sword as his life purpose, and Jin-Woo is sure that he doesn't want to just sit there and rust away. Jin-Woo declares that if Igris needs someone to dedicate his sword to, then he should serve him. Jin-Woo uses his last attempt and once again tells Igris to arise. A huge amount of power bursts from Igris's corpse, but this time it's different. Igris's shadow emerges and Jin-Woo was allowed to give his level 7 knight a name. Jin-Woo honors the knight and gives him his old name Igris. At the same time, President Go explains that reawakening happen every day and he hopes that this will bring forth the hunter that defies all expectations. In this moment, Igris and the rest of Jin-Woo's shadow army kneel before him. Jin-Woo is amazed by the sight and declares that they are all with him now. Back with the other hunters, they have finally arrived on Jeju Island. Jonghyun is examining what are the red ants from the terrible raid and he is shocked to see something that has never happened before. He declares that the monsters are evolving and we see that the ant has grown wings. Season 2 started with Jin-Woo, who is awoken by his sister, who reminds him that he has to meet with her teacher. Gina can't even recognize her brother, and we see that Jin-Woo has grown since we last saw him. Jin-Woo just wants to look respectable in front of the teacher, but his new look has all the schoolgirls admiring him. Gina reminds Jin-Woo that he doesn't have a girlfriend, and offers to introduce him to some of her desperate friends. Jin-Woo isn't interested in those hideous gargoyles, and he finally meets with the teacher. The teacher compliments Gina endlessly for being such a good role model to the other students, and even reveals that Gina's exam scores will get her into any medical school she wants. The teacher only has one concern. She wants to know if Jin-Woo will allow Gina to become a hunter if she goes through an awakening. Jin-Woo instantly says no, so the teacher has a secret request. Outside, Sung-Yi is shocked to find Jin-Woo waiting for her. He reveals that he's Gina's sister, but Sung-Yi already knows what he wants to say. She declares that she won't be going back to school no matter how much her teacher wants her to, and she definitely won't be quitting hunting. Jin-Woo points out that she's only an E-rank hunter, and there's no way she can make a living hunting. Sung-Yi is quick to point out that Jin-Woo is also just an E-rank, but Jin-Woo has had enough. He reveals that he actually isn't here to convince her to quit hunting, and he tells her to come with him. Elsewhere, Inspector Woo welcomes home the hunter Dong-Soo. Dong-Soo would rather be anywhere else than Japan, but he has important business to take care of. Woo wonders if he's here to meet with a certain 2 hunters, but Dong-Soo is insulted by the question. He doesn't plan to just meet with them, he wants revenge. Dong-Soo declares that he plans to do terrible things to Jin-Woo and his friend, and he will do it inside of a dungeon where no one will know. Dong-Soo tells Woo that him and his surveillance team can just pretend that they don't know about his plan. That is, unless weaklings like them want to try and stop him. Woo explains that his only job is to monitor hunters who may pose a risk to public safety, and the 2 men part ways. Back at the Hunters Association, we see that Choi has returned from Jeju Island, and they discovered something alarming. The red ants have developed wings and can now travel with them. They can only go a short distance right now, but if they evolve further, then they might even be able to leave the island. Their infestation could lead to a nationwide disaster, so Chairman Go decides that he will have to look into the matter. Back with Jin-Woo, we see that he has brought Sung-Yi to a dungeon raid that was set up by On. It's actually a training exercise for some young hunters, and On has agreed to let Jin-Woo and Sung-Yi participate. Their conversation is interrupted by the tank of the strike team, who is tired of waiting. His name is Kim Chu and he's an A-rank tank. He is serving as the leader of the strike team for the training mission, but he's upset about having to babysit the E-ranks Jin-Woo and Song Yi. Aside from the A-rank Kim Chu, there will be 5 B ranks on the strike team and 2 C ranks. We then learn that Jin-Woo wanted to show Song Yi how brutal raids can be during the mission. He was hoping it would make her reconsider being a hunter, but he realizes that his plan might not go so well after seeing how many powerful hunters are on the strike team. If they succeed too easily, then it will completely defeat the purpose. Lee knows how strong Jin-Woo really is, so he asks him to limit his participation so the rookies can get a good training session. Everyone heads into the dungeon, but Jin-Woo instantly senses that something is wrong. To everyone's surprise, the dungeon portal changes color and Jin-Woo realizes what this means. He quickly grabs onto Sung Yi and tries to get out of the dungeon. It's a struggle, so Jin-Woo urgently instructs On to contact the primary strike team immediately. Jin-Woo is pulled back into the portal, and we see that Beck is horrified to hear about what's happening. He is told that a C-rank gate has turned red. This should be impossible, so Beck decides that he must go there immediately. In the dungeon, everyone is shocked to see that the gate has disappeared and they're in a strange place. Kim Chu explains that it's all because of the red gate. Jin-Woo reveals that unlike a typical gate, once you step through a red gate, it takes you to a dungeon completely isolated from the outside. No one can leave it until the boss is defeated or a dungeon break occurs. No one can even send help from the outside. That isn't all, as the magic beasts inside red gates are much stronger than normal. Just then an attack comes flying at Sung Yi's head, but we see that someone else collapses. A rookie is stunned and mesmerized as she sees that Jin-Woo just managed to save Sung Yi's life. The attackers turn out to be ice elves and they attack from so far away that the average hunter wouldn't have been able to detect it. Jin-Woo is no normal hunter and he determines that the elves attack the weakest members of the strike team first. That was the guy that just got deleted and Sung Yi. These elves are pretty confident in themselves, but Jin-Woo is furious. Sung Yi asks about their opponent, so Jin-Woo explains that because of the cruel nature of these elves, hunters call them something more befitting of demons. They call them ice slayers. Kim Chu realizes how dangerous this situation is, but he knows that he won't be able to protect everyone himself. Because of this, he decides to form a second group, but Jin-Woo thinks this is strange. Kim Chu frames it as a way to raise their chance of survival, and guarantees that anyone who follows him will make it out alive. However, Jin-Woo knows that he just wants to leave some of them behind. Several members vow to follow Kim Chu, but he rejects one of the other hunters. Kim Chu refuses to accept the C-ranks into his group, and the same goes for Jin-Woo and Sung Yi. He explains that every day they spend in the dungeon, an hour passes on the outside. They might be inside the red gate for several months, so he doesn't want to waste any time looking after dead weight. Oddly, the other girl in the group has to join the lower-ranked hunters. Kim Chu allows her to go with them, but calls her a fool and wonders if she just pities them. However, in reality, this girl realizes that not even Kim Chu was able to notice the arrow attack. Jin-Woo was the only one who sensed it coming, so she quietly wonders if he's not really an E-rank. Jin-Woo just ignores her, but she determines that he must be an A-rank, or even higher. After the two groups part ways, Kim Chu finds the markings left by an ice bear. It's a terrifying sign, and the others realize that they just basically left the E-ranks to die. Those guys are in a terrible situation, but Kim Chu is confused by something else. That one girl is a B rank, and they also have 2 C ranks with them, so Kim Chu can't figure out why he assumed that the E rank Jin-Woo was their leader. Just then their group is confronted by several bears, and Kim Chu instantly shows his value as a tank. A bear gets destroyed trying to attack him, and Kim Chu quickly ends its life. The battle isn't over however, as several bears remain. Back with the other group, the girl named Park points out that there are claw marks all around them. They are clearly in bear territory, so she thinks that they should go back, but Jin-Woo says that's exactly why they must keep going forward. If they really are in bear territory, it means that they will only have to worry about bears. That is much better than dealing with intelligent enemies like the ice elves. Park is amazed that Jin-Woo was able to think so far ahead and apologizes to him. Jin-Woo retrieves a coat for her and everyone is stunned to see that he just used summoning magic. This is because even high-ranked hunters have trouble storing more than 2 or 3 low-level items. Jin-Woo gets coats for them all and Sung Yi wonders just who Jin-Woo really is. Jin-Woo doesn't reveal his true power and simply says that it's his fault for bringing her here. The least he can do is keep her safe and all he asks is that she not asks him any questions about what he really is. Jin-Woo will do what he must to keep everyone alive, but he tells the others not to ask any questions either about what they see. Just then everyone is horrified as the bear approaches them, but Jin-Woo tells everyone to remain calm. He then calmly changes his title to the Wolf Assassin. Outside, Beck arrives to find that the Red Gate is completely sealed. He doesn't believe that the hunters have much of a chance to survive, and says that it will all depend on Kim Chu. Just then, On reveals that there's someone else that might prove to be an important factor. He says that the hunter's name is Jin-Woo and it's someone that caught his eye recently. Beck is not impressed when On reveals that Jin-Woo is just an E-rank, but On believes that Jin-Woo may have reawakened. Unfortunately, he can't prove this as it's not confirmed. Just then, Dong-soo arrives, and Beck is not pleased to see him at all. This is not Dong-soo's jurisdiction, as he's supposed to be in America right now, but Dong-soo has a question of his own. He wants to know why an E-rank is in the gate of the White Tiger Guild. Beck is shocked when he realizes that he's after Jin-Woo, and Dong-soo is annoyed to have come all this way just for his target to be stuck in some gate. Dong-soo assumes that Jin-Woo will just lose his life in the Red Gate, but Woo thinks that the E-rank is lucky. Being stuck in the Red Gate means that not even the powerful Dong-soo can do anything to him. The only question is if Jin-Woo can somehow manage to survive the dangers of the Red Gate. Inside, all the hunters are stunned as Jin-Woo stands victorious over a sea of defeated bears. Park can't help but break Jin-Woo's only rule, as she wonders just how powerful Jin-Woo really is. That night, the group feasts on the bear meat. They haven't been getting attacked as much, so Sung-yi wonders if Jin-Woo already defeated most of the bears. Park points out that there can still be a lot of them left in the bear den, so they must remain cautious. The girls are shocked, however, that even after all that fighting Jin-Woo has gone out to do more training. Park calls him a very strange man and Sung-yi kind of agrees with her. Nearby, we see that Jin-Woo has actually gone straight to the bear's den. Jin-Woo is as serious as ever as he calls in his army to come out. Several undead soldiers are summoned, and Jin-Woo explains that this will be their first job. He sends them after the bears, and an all-out battle breaks out. The bears prove to be worthy adversaries, but Jin-Woo's army has plenty of firepower. Even when the bears manage to take down some soldiers, they just regenerate as they are undead. Artillery with high firepower, infantry that can regenerate quickly, they are completely outperforming Jin-Woo's expectations. However, they do drain a ton of his energy. Just then, the leader of the pack reveals itself. It shows just how powerful it is as it easily takes on several soldiers and Jin-Woo's mana is completely depleted. His shadow soldiers were wiped out instantly, and Jin-Woo doesn't have the mana to resummon them. Because of this, Jin-Woo sends out the shadow version of Igris, the red armored knight. The bear quickly attacks, but it's no match for Igris's fighting prowess. Igris absolutely wrecks the powerful beast and brings it to its knees. He ends the fight by cutting the monster's head off, and Jin-Woo acknowledges how powerful his companion is. He is sure that if Igris was fighting with his sword the entire time during their battle, then Igris would have ended his life. He realizes that it's only at his current level that he's on equal footing with Igris. Jin-Woo quickly corrects himself, however, as he thinks that he might still be weaker than him. Igris kneels before his master, and Jin-Woo praises his loyal soldier. Elsewhere, we find that Kim Chu is struggling to breathe. The other members of his party have been eliminated, but Kim Chu vows to accomplish his goal of joining the elite of the White Tiger Guild. He's horrified to see the position he is in now as the Ice Elves have surrounded him, and they finish off the last of his group. Kim Chu succumbs to fear and runs for his life, as he is watched by the leader of the elves. The story continues. We see Jin-Woo stands victorious over the Death Bears, and shows his immense power as a necromancer when he tells them to rise. Shadow bears emerge from the corpses, and Jin-Woo adds to his shadow army. Outside the portal, On explains that the strike force has been stuck for 3 hours, but on the inside it would be around 3 days. Red gates are very dangerous, so Dong-soo determines that Jin-Woo must already be a goner, and he prepares to leave. Dong-soo stops himself, however, as he demands to know why Jin-Woo is hanging around with the White Tiger Guild. On simply explains that Jin-Woo is an acquaintance of his, and he wanted to watch his rank mission. On is relieved when this seems to be a good enough answer, but Dong-soo shocks everyone as he begins to choke On. Dong-soo isn't gullible, and he knows that On has a knack for sniffing out new talent. Just then, we see that Beck has gotten very serious, as he has transformed, and he tells Dong-soo to stop. This only infuriates Dong-soo, as he says Beck is just a big fish in a small pond. The two men release some of their power, terrifying On because an S-rank battle would break out if these guys aren't stopped. The entire area could end up completely destroyed, but the guys are furious, and they attack each other anyway. Back inside the portal, Kim Chu's relieved to have gotten away from the elves. His relief turns to shock, however, as he comes across the corpses of the powerful death bears. It's a horrifying sight, and he wonders if the E-ranks he left behind are responsible. As he trembles in fear, he realizes that Jin-Woo and the others weren't strong enough to do this. Kim-Chu fears that the Ice Slayers could be behind it, so he runs back into the forest. Back outside, Dong-Soo is impressed as he sees that Mr. Woo is somehow powerful enough to stop an S-rank fight. The humble Woo says that the only reason his arms are still intact is because the two hunters held back at the last second. Woo explains to Dong-Soo that he re-evaluated Jin-Woo 2 months ago, and he is certain that the kid is really just an E-rank. Furthermore, the surveillance team has investigated the death of Dong-Soo's brother, and they determined that he was eliminated by a magic beast. Dong-Soo knows that this is just a story for the public, and he determines that if the killer isn't Jin-Woo, then it must be the other guy, the rich kid named Yu. Woo wants to know why he's after Jin-Woo if that's the case, but Dong-Soo's answer is simple: Jin-Woo is an accomplice. Just then, Dong-Soo gets called away and he says that Jin-Woo is lucky. On thinks about how no one understands Jin-Woo's power the way he does, and he is sure that Jin-Woo will survive the Red Gate. Back inside, the other members of Jin-Woo's group sit by a fire, but we see that Kim-Chu has found them. He is furious to see that weaklings like them have somehow managed to survive. Not only that, they are also thriving with weather gear, blankets, and food. Kim-Chu angrily confronts them and reveals that his group died because they didn't have any gear. He has lost his mind, as he demands to know who is hiding all the equipment, as he blames them for his dead teammates. He comes to the realization that Park must have known all along, and that was why she wanted to join the weak group. Kim-Chu demands that the one behind it all confess, as he counts down from 3, or else he will eliminate them all. Kim-Chu finishes his countdown without anyone confessing, but he already knows who's behind it. He screams Jin-Woo's name as he goes to eliminate everyone, but Jin-Woo appears out of nowhere to absolutely destroy him. Everyone is shocked to see their leader, and Jin-Woo can't believe that Kim-Chu is blaming others for his party's failure. That wasn't his only mistake, as Jin-Woo detects that Kim-Chu dragged in even more trouble. Jin-Woo tells the lurkers that their aura is way too strong to not notice, and instructs them to drop their stealth. The Ice Elves oblige and reveal themselves, and their leader's surprised to see that one of the human scums is actually strong. Jin-Woo fires back with a response, but everyone is stunned to see that he can speak the language of the magic beast. Jin-Woo is surprised as well, but he determines that his cheat system is to thank for it. The elven leader then explains why they are here. One of his men could tell how powerful Jin-Woo was when he stopped the arrow, and he wants to fight him. Before the leader can even finish his sentence, however, Jin-Woo chops off the head of the challenger. The leader is very amused, but Jin-Woo isn't, and he just goes right in to attack the leader. The leader defends himself well, and Jin-Woo can tell that he won't go down easy. The leader's amusement continues, as he says that Jin-Woo is not human, and he wonders why he's pretending to be. Jin-Woo has no clue what he's rambling on about, so the leader laughs as it means Jin-Woo is unaware. He reveals that elves have a voice in their head that tells them to kill humans. However, they don't hear it when it comes to Jin-Woo. This makes Jin-Woo wonder if this is similar to his system directives. The voice not directing them against him could stem from Jin-Woo being the player. The leader reveals that he would rather handle things in a sensible way, and he encourages Jin-Woo to just hand over the humans. Jin-Woo wants to know why they are fighting humans in the first place, but something strange happens as the leader begins to answer. His body glitches for a moment, and he just repeats what he said a second ago. Jin-Woo refuses, so the leader wonders if he really intends to make them his enemy. He reminds Jin-Woo that they outnumber him by a lot, but our boy Jin-Woo wonders why he is so sure about that. Jin-Woo summons his army, and the others question how this can even be possible. The confident elven leader thinks it's just a waste of time, but Jin-Woo isn't interested in his words. He wants a fight, and the leader obliges. The two sides clash in a bloody battle, and the others try to run away. Some archers set their eyes on them, but Jin-Woo shows his incredible fighting prowess as he deletes them. Unfortunately, he can now also see why the leader was so confident, as the elves are doing major damage. Jin-Woo's army is immortal, but the regeneration costs magic power. Jin-Woo has a lot of it, but it will run out eventually. On top of that, Jin-Woo has determined that the leader is clearly stronger than him. The leader attacks Jin-Woo directly, and Jin-Woo realizes that even if he fought alongside Igris, the leader would still be really tough. All odds are against him, and regular soldiers aren't going to cut it, so Jin-Woo determines that he needs a stronger fighting force. The leader introduces himself as Barca, and Jin-Woo gives his name as well. The two warriors then charge at each other, and Barca shows some dominance. He is surprised, however, when Jin-Woo teleports his blade to his other hand. The two narrowly avoid each other's attacks, but Jin-Woo eventually gets pushed back. Barca hasn't enjoyed a fight like this in ages, but Jin-Woo has even more for him to enjoy. Jin-Woo lets out a smile, and Barca is stunned as a giant meteor crashes down on him. Nearby, Kim Chu regains consciousness, and just barely remembers getting wrecked. He once again curses Jin-Woo, and takes hold of his sword. Jin-Woo managed to buy some time with his magic soldiers, but Barca is not impressed, and goes in for another attack. Just then, Jin-Woo notices that Kim Chu is coming from behind. He actually predicted this would happen, so with Barca quickly approaching, Jin-Woo has Igris create a smoke screen. While hidden, Jin-Woo has Igris and Kim Chu's life. Kim Chu is stunned to realize that Jin-Woo knew all this would happen, and he was just being manipulated. With Kim Chu now dead, Jin-Woo tells him to rise, and a blast of light emerges from his body. Barca is still charging in, and he tells Jin-Woo that hiding won't save him. He is stunned, however, when a new soldier appears to push him back. Jin-Woo names his newest member, Iron, and the soldier lets out a loud scream. Barca is prepared to take on any challenge, and from just a few seconds of battle, he can tell that Iron isn't very agile. Nearby, Sung-Yi wonders if this is what all hunter battles are like. The others tell her that nothing about what's happening right now is normal, and they have never seen anything like it before. Barca eventually feels like Iron isn't enough of a challenge for him, so he instructs Jin-Woo to join him along with his knight. Jin-Woo is happy to oblige him this time, and the 3-on-1 battle ensues. Barca shows his incredible might as he fends them all off, but he's quickly annoyed by Iron's loud scream. He decides that Iron will have to die first, but Iron is a serious tank. Barca's confidence only grows as he dodges Igris's attack, but he's stunned when Jin-Woo manages to stab him. Jin-Woo is still impressed by the elf, however, as he somehow managed to avoid a fatal blow even amidst all the chaos. Barca doesn't like to be underestimated, but Jin-Woo credits him for staying alive for so long. Jin-Woo commends his opponent, but wonders how the rest of his army is doing. Barca gasps as he remembers the other part of the battle, and he is horrified to see that Jin-Woo's shadow army has eliminated his entire clan. Barca isn't too worried, however, as he knows that the army will fall after he takes out Jin-Woo. Just then, Barca dodges Jin-Woo's attack as he throws his dagger, and Barca mocks him. He calls Jin-Woo a fool for simply throwing his weapon away, but he doesn't know the first thing about our boy. Jin-Woo uses his absolute control of his weapon to call it back, and Barca just barely manages to block it. His weapon is destroyed in the process, however, so Jin-Woo sends Iron to take hold of the leader. With him unable to move, Jin-Woo has his magic soldiers unleash an insanely powerful fire attack. The battle isn't over, however, as Barca cuts through Iron. He vows to eliminate all the humans, but Jin-Woo is right there to silence him. Jin-Woo says that the battle is over, but Barca insists that it will only end when he says it does. Unfortunately, this isn't true, as Iron regenerates and absolutely crushes him. Jin-Woo reiterates that it's over, and we see that Barca is long gone. Just then, the ground begins to shake, but it's only because Iron's making sure that their job is done. Jin-Woo reminds his new soldier that he must show restraint, and he hopes that this doesn't become a problem. The others are glad to hear that it's all over, and they are shocked when Jin-Woo calmly tells them that it's time to leave. They're all relieved, but Jin-Woo has one more thing to do, as he looks at Barca's lifeless body. Outside, Han says that Beak can return home now. A week has passed inside the portal, and he fears the worst. Beak refuses to leave, however, and they are both shocked when people start coming out of the portal. Beak is sure that it's Kim Chu, as he was certain that his guild member would be able to pull it off. Of course, he's surprised to see who actually comes out, and Han proves to be the correct one, as Jin-Woo emerges. The gate closes, so Beak can only wonder where Kim Chu is. He's horrified to learn that only the low-ranked hunters survived, and he wonders what exactly went on inside. Beak would like to question Jin-Woo, but Jin-Woo is exhausted and he tells Beak to save his questions for someone in its guild. Beak can't believe what he just heard, as he wasn't asking for a favor. It was an order, and at worst he was trying to make a threat. Beak gets even more serious, so he reminds Jin-Woo that 6 of his guild members have gone missing. It's his responsibility to find out what happened. Jin-Woo is not one to be intimidated, as he points out that he was the one that saved the 2 surviving members. This means that it's also Beak's responsibility to show him some gratitude. Tensions rise, But Beak calms down as he realizes that Jin-Woo is right. He apologizes and Jin-Woo takes Song-yi home. Beak asks Park who exactly that guy was, and wonders why he was so angry. Park reveals that it was actually only after beating the boss that his mood changed. On insists that it must be exhaustion, as Jin-Woo is normally a nice guy. Beak has taken an interest in Jin-Woo, of course, and he instructs On to make sure he is brought to their guild, no matter what it takes. Later, Jin-Woo drops off Song-yi. She thanks him for everything, and looks forward to the next time they meet. As he leaves, Jin-Woo realizes that it hasn't even been an entire day since they were trapped. He's disappointed as he only earned 1 dagger for all his trouble, and determines that Barca must have been just too high of a level. A look back at what happened shows that Jin-Woo tried to make an immortal soldier out of the elven leader. He was given 3 tries, but Jin-Woo wasn't able to extract him. Jin-Woo at least got iron out of this situation, but that was the 3rd time already that he has had to take human lives. The next day, Yu meets with Jin-Woo, but Jin-Woo can't believe what he's wearing. They are headed to a mission, but Jin-Woo tells them that they need to pick someone up. This ends up being Song-yi, and Yu is shocked to see how informal they are being with each other. Jin-Woo wonders if she managed to get any sleep, but this gives Yu the wrong idea. Worried about Jin-Woo, Yu reminds him that Song-yi is underage. Of course Jin-Woo isn't doing what he thinks, so he's casual about it, but Yu once again gets the wrong idea. The story continues. We see Yo watch as in absolute amazement as Jin-Woo's soldiers take out a group of powerful beasts. Yo can't understand where they came from, and Jin-Woo remembers that Yo hasn't seen them yet. Jin-Woo reveals that they're a part of one of his skills, but Yo had no idea that this kind of immense power was even possible. With the battle over, Jin-Woo has his army start mining the area for crystals. Yo is pretty down as he can't compete with the army, and he pleads for Jin-Woo to at least let him have the essence stones. Jin-Woo isn't selfish though, and one of his soldiers offers to share. Elsewhere, we see that a man stands inside a destroyed ship. A soldier begs for his life, but the man tells him to calm down. It doesn't help much however, as they don't speak the same language, so the man uses a bit of English. He explains that he is human, and he just wants to go home. Back with our hero, he celebrates with Yo, as they just completed the 19 raids that was part of their deal. Yo must now pass the written exam at the association, so he can get a guildmaster's license. With that, he will be able to start negotiating with his father. As for Jin-Woo, he has decided to travel for a while. Yo assumes that he's trying to get away from him, but Jin-Woo points out that he's just drunk. Yo is actually just used to being pushed away, because he has a brother that is 10 years older than him and he is never like Yo. They never even did anything brotherly together. Jin-Woo on the other hand, has done a ton to help him, so Yo wishes that he was his brother instead. Jin-Woo can tell how hurt Yo is, so he says that starting today he will consider Yo to be his little brother. Elsewhere, we see that the mysterious man has been restrained, and some investigators wonder where he came from. He claims to be a foreign hunter who is trapped inside a gate 10 years ago, and he was unable to leave. At some point, he was able to find an exit that took him to a gate in America. The investigators are worried that he might be a humanoid magic beast, so they have requested the help of an S-rank hunter. That hunter is Dong-Soo. They are waiting for him to do the questioning, as the only thing they know is that this guy's name is Yi-Hwan. Later Jin-Woo informs his sister that he will be traveling for a week. She says that he's been pretty busy lately, and she wonders who he will be going with. Jin-Woo is annoyed by the question, and simply says that he will be going with a friend. Jin-Woo then returns to the entrance of the demon castle. He was only level 20 when he barely survived his fight against Cerberus. Jin-Woo's level has increased by 3 times that amount, so this challenge should be easier for him now. Jin-Woo uses the key obtained from his system and makes his way inside while thinking about the quest objectives. Demons roam the castle, and he must gather their souls. Jin-Woo is shocked however, when the quest reveals that he must collect 10,000 demon souls, and he can't believe that there are even that many inside. Jin-Woo hasn't lost sight of his real objective however, and that is to get the ingredients for the elixir of life. He doesn't care how many thousands of demons there are, he will stop at nothing to complete this quest. Elsewhere, Yo tells his father that he wants to take over the guild. He is well aware of the fact that his brother is planning to do the same, but Yo doesn't agree with what he's going to do. Yo is sure that his brother will bring in someone from the outside to run the guild, but he thinks it's too risky for the company. His father, however, is more concerned about who he has become friends with. He's talking about the hunter Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo was present for 3 very mysterious and controversial events: the double dungeon, the raid Han's team was wiped out in, and the incident where a surveillance team hunter murdered a group of convicts. Jin-Woo was not only present, he somehow managed to survive these 3 very dangerous events. Now he was present in the 19 raids Yo cleared, so he could become a master hunter. Han has also heard that Jin-Woo was involved in the Red Gate incident, and he led the survivors to safety. It's clear that Yo was only able to get his guild master license because of Jin-Woo, and Han is insulted that his son would use such backhanded tactics to get control of the guild. Yo admits to going about it the wrong way, but he believes that he knows what's best for the guild. Just then, Han shockingly agrees to do things Yo's way, but only on one condition. He has heard that the White Tigers Guild is planning to scout Jin-Woo ever since the Red Gate incident. Jin-Woo is clearly someone of interest, so Han wants him with their guild instead. He wonders if Yo can arrange this, and Yo promises that he can. Back with Jin-Woo, he finds that he cannot extract the demons to add to his army, but he can't understand why. He has taken out a whole bunch of them, but it seems like it might have just been a waste of time. Just then Jin-Woo receives an entry permit for the next floor. A light shows him the way, and Jin-Woo still can't believe how huge this dungeon is. It's an entire city inside of one building, and all the walking is becoming a pain. Thankfully, he doesn't have to walk as he summons the bear leader to travel on. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of demons in the way, but this proves to be no problem for Jin-Woo's powerful beast. The bear plows right through the sea of demons, so Jin-Woo decides to call him Tank. Elsewhere, some girls are amazed as they admire Cha-Hae. Cha-Hae then thinks back to when she spoke with Choi. Choi has decided to keep the reports of the flying ants confidential, but Cha-Hae thinks they should publicize it. Choi explained that it would only cause a panic, and they just need to focus on making their organization stronger. They are the largest domestic guild, and getting stronger is the best way for them to expand. Back with Jin-Woo, he has taken out even more demons. He was afraid that this was an S-rank dungeon when he first received the key, but the demons he has been fighting seem to be around the upper end of B rank. There is a ton of them, and they keep getting stronger the higher up he goes. However, by only killing the demons he needs to pass each floor, Jin-Woo has been able to make some pretty easy progress. Jin-Woo predicts that there will be 100 floors in this castle, just like there was in the tower, so he wonders just how strong he will be when he reaches the top. As Jin-Woo reaches 4,000 souls collected, he reminds himself to keep track of his supplies. He also has to keep his promise to Gina of only being away for 1 week, so it's quickly becoming a race against time. Eventually, Jin-Woo reaches the 10,000 mark of souls collected, and he wonders how much further he can go. He encounters a group of powerful monsters, and its leader's name is in red, indicating that it's incredibly dangerous. It's called Vulcan, the boss-class leader of the lower floors. Elsewhere, we see that Han is looking for Jin-Woo, but Gina just told him that he's on a trip. There are no records of him doing a raid right now, and no signs of him leaving the country. The last trace the association has of him is smack in the middle of the city, but they can only wonder where he is. In the dungeon, Jin-Woo says that he will take on the big boss, and he tells his army to wipe out the others. His army then springs into action, and starts taking out the demons. Now that Jin-Woo has more points in his intellect ability, he's able to summon more soldiers, and have more magical power to maintain them. Thanks to that, battling has become much easier. Jin-Woo then stares at the boss-class demon, and wonders if the big guy is ever going to get up. He casually assumes that it's not going to move, but he is stunned when it shows incredible speed to attack him. Jin-Woo shows insane speed himself, as he dodges and he furiously lands a counterattack. This sends the giant boss flying, and Jin-Woo even surprises himself. All he did was punch the thing, so he wonders if he overleveled his strength. Vulcan isn't done however, and he lets out a loud scream. It seemingly goes into another mode, and this reminds Jin-Woo of what happened with Cerberus. The beast's attack is coming quickly, so Jin-Woo calls out to Iron, and Iron sends him a shield. Jin-Woo blocks the attack just in time, but the giant throws out a barrage of attacks. The flurry of punches isn't slowing down, and Jin-Woo can only wonder how something so big can move so fast. Jin-Woo eventually finds an opening, and makes his way to the back of the beast, but he is shocked to find that it can anticipate his moves. This opponent is an absolute monster, and the only part of him that looks vulnerable are his beady little eyes. Jin-Woo starts running, and thinks about how he must keep it from being able to zip around. He comes up with a plan when he finds the perfect building to use, and he runs up it. Jin-Woo pities the beast for being too focused on him, as it crashes straight into the building. With it unable to move, Jin-Woo summons his weapon, and cuts right through the Vulcan's neck. The Lord of the Lower Floor is defeated, and Jin-Woo receives the item called World Tree Fragment. Elsewhere, Yi-Hwan is questioned by Dong-Su. Dong-Su has heard that Yi-Hwan is a magic beast who can talk, but Yi-Hwan denies it. He agrees to do any kind of testing they want, including DNA, but Dong-Su doesn't want him to speak unless he asks him a question. Dong-soo is actually annoyed after having his fun ruined, and he has a look at Ip-1's paperwork. Ip-1 would like to ask him something, but Dong-soo tells him to quiet down. Ip-1 asks anyway, and wonders how much humanity has learned about gates and magic beasts. Dong-soo has no clue what he means, so Ip-1 explains that the dungeons, the gates, and the beasts are all just the tip of the iceberg. He warns that the power capable of bringing forth the ultimate catastrophe has awakened. Ip-1 can't see anymore, but reveals that his goal is to avert this catastrophe. Dong-soo has had enough of this nonsense, and reminds Ip-1 that there are millions of hunters around the world. If enough of them gather their power, they can stop any threat. Unfortunately, Ip-1 reveals, the numbers will not help against the threat he speaks of. They will be devoured and used against them. Dong-soo is done listening, and is more confused by how a magic beast somehow managed to have a wife and 2 kids. Dong-soo wonders what his son's name is, and Ip-1 reveals that his name is Jin-Woo. Dong-soo takes great delight in hearing this, and tells Ip-1 that his son is dead. Dong-soo won't be answering any of his questions, and he simply tells Ip-1 that he can ask his questions to his son when they meet in the next world. Dong-soo unleashes some of his power while making this threat, but Ip-1 gets a murderous look in his eyes. Back in the dungeon, Jin-Woo's army is tearing through another group of demons. Jin-Woo admits to the leader that things are getting pretty one-sided, and he wonders if the demon is shocked by how tough his shadow soldiers are. It's now clear to Jin-Woo that even the undead can feel fear, and he slices the leader's head off. A notification reveals that he just defeated Métis, the Guider of Souls, and Jin-Woo has leveled up even more. Back outside, we see that a major disaster has destroyed part of the city. An investigator has heard that fights between S ranks could change the shape of the landscape, laying waste to everything in sight. He considers everyone to be fortunate, however, that this fight was limited to just this area, as it could have been much worse. The entire thing happened so fast, and it was almost instantaneous. He could only watch the aftermath, as Dong-soo was completely defeated, faster than the damage could even spread. Back in the dungeon, Jin-Woo has run out of food, which means that this is as far as he can go for now. He has gotten to floor 75, and there's most likely only 25 left. That's still a pretty long way to go, but the gains were worth it. He received a necklace from the skeleton he just defeated, and an earring from the beast on level 50. Alone they are very useful, but they also give a set bonus, which adds 5 points to all stats. There is one empty space in the set, which tells him that there's one more boss level beast to go. He also receives something called the Sphere of Avarice. It doesn't do anything for him, but it doesn't have to be him who uses it. In the hands of magic soldiers, it'll double their firepower. Finally, his latest reward was the ability to choose the cursed random loot box. Jin-Woo was worried that he would never get another chance at the box, but he's glad to receive a second key from it. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with any details, so he has no clue when or where to use it. That isn't important, however, as he reminds himself about the ingredients he is after. He got the World Tree Fragment from Vulcan, and Spring Water from Echo Forest by beating Métis. That's 2 of the 3 ingredients he needs for the Elixir of Life. There's just one more left before he can help his dying mother. Jin-Woo vows that the next time he comes back here, find him, wondering if he has resigned from the team. The mining team leader notices her, and she asks him about Jin-Woo, finding out that he has gone inside the gate as a porter. Back inside the gate, we notice Jin-Woo and the others arriving at a throne room, and they are welcomed by Kargalgan and a huge army of orcs. That brings the episode to an end. Thanks for watching. Want next part? Subscribe the channel and turn on notification bell.